Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Richard Lewis Show. I'm Richard Lewis. My producer, Sam Davis, is back from wherever he was. Where were you again?
G-Fin. I was working Halo World Championships London.
Oh, yeah? How did that go?
Yeah, it was big. I used to watch like a lot of Halo when I was first coming to esports, a lot of Halo 3, so it was weird. Watching like all the players I used to watch were commentating it. Good little throwback, mate. It was fun.
Yeah, you make bank?
Yeah. Nice bit of quiche involved. Obviously, I ain't going unless there's quiche.
Hey, good for you, man. I'm glad. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be commenting on our new look overlay. Now, it was kind of a weird situation because the guy who made him sent them to me and was like, I don't want any money. You don't have to give me a shout out or anything. I will say it's a shout out to Jay if he wants to take full credit for it and, get some attention from the rest of the community, the guys. Then sure, we'll do that. I'll put his Twitter out there. But for now, just thanks to Jay. Jay's been, a long-term follower of the show and decided, we needed a fresh new look. And, I thought, fuck it, let's go with it. So big shout out to him. And, of course, Sam has certainly tweaked it. Things move and pop up and break occasionally, of course.
Yeah, I know. Loot boxes, shit in the bed, of course. See, you try to make something nice and everything just breaks now.
Yeah,
I didn't like that much.
banter.
Like, I made the t-shirts change, mate. That's pretty fucking swifty. I did the little sub thing.
Yeah.
What else have I got on there? I get rid of this. We got a little donation ticker. Wait for him to roll. There he is, rolling in. He's rolling in. Little donation box.
Nice.
I think that's pretty much it. Like.
Good work. And look, I'll give everyone fair warning. We did talk about having to do, a serious show, and it's not super often. We do shows that are serious in a way that it's going to be like a majority somber affair. We did one after kind of what happened over at Charlottesville. We've done one we do them from time to time when there's sort of big landmark moments in sort of the cultural landscape. And usually, we like to just keep it light and keep it breezy on the show. We laugh at people who are idiots. We break down media spin. That's what the podcast is for. But today we're going to talk about what happened in Florida. It's going to be a pretty long show. That's going to be primarily all based around that. We're going to talk about what happened, all the various ways that it failed down, the disgusting reaction in the media, the disgusting political reaction on both sides of the political spectrum, both extreme sides of the political spectrum, and just how somehow video games has ended up being blamed once again, which is obviously ludicrous to anybody who knows anything about anything. There's certainly no science to back that up, but it's not as if Trump is a guy who necessarily fucking understands science anyway. I
saw on the news today that he's going to have a meeting with video game executives or something.
Yeah, they're going to help him out, right?
Yeah, right. Number one, if you do want to say he's got something bad, probably don't go see the video game executives, like.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, at the end of the day, we're definitely going to get there, but it's sort of just in line, any guy who's going to tweet out that global warming is a Chinese hoax is probably going to come out and say ridiculous things like video games are to blame for school shootings. So, China. I mean, yeah, it's kind of it's just a weird one, isn't it? So, look, we'll get into it now. For those of you who didn't follow the news, I almost envy you because this was just another horrible story, but one that's kind of become all too familiar. And it was that at Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida, there was a shooting on Valentine's Day, which was one of the most lethal school shootings in the world. This had 17 people that were killed and 14 injured. And it was perpetrated by a 19-year-old called Nicholas Jacob Cruz. He was arrested. He's currently, in jail. He's awaiting his trial. We've been told that people are going to seek the death penalty for him. I can't say I'm sad about that, even though I do fundamentally oppose the death penalty. It's a very emotive issue, so it's very hard to sort of kind of like take that backward step that I know I should. Like, I don't like the death penalty as a concept, right? But like, if it's going to exist, then fry this guy, And it's kind of tough to. That's why justice has to be blind, because if it was left to people like me, I'd have no qualms about it. But I understand it's not something I necessarily want to see in the judicial system. Well, anyway. What this individual did was on February the 14th, he decided to go to his school. He took a series of weapons with him. He took an Uber ride there. He entered the building, which is a big 3-story structure, which has, about 30 classrooms, has about 900 students there. Incredibly, only 30 teachers, which it seems like a discrepancy in and of itself, right? But, the American education system definitely has its problems. And he took in, of course, an AR-15, which is a semi-automatic rifle. For those who know, obviously I go to gun ranges quite a bit. I practice often with an AR-15. People will see photos on my Twitter of me using an AR-15 and tweeting at the manufacturers. I don't know why I feel the need to disclose that, but I suppose I should make it apparent. But the AR-15 has sort of been the pinup for the anti-gun movement in America for a long time, and we'll get to that. But anyway, he went in, activated a fire alarm, and then amidst the chaos just started unloading into people. There were videos coming out, which I don't believe we can show you because of Twitch terms of service, but there were videos coming out from inside the school while the shooting was active. People barricaded into their classrooms with gun noises just popping outside of the door, coming through windows. It was truly horrifying. It's as horrifying as you can imagine something like this to be trapped in a place where you should feel safe, a place that you are compelled to go, and a place that supposedly has security measures, and all of a sudden you're in a fight for your life because somebody is shooting you indiscriminately. Now, we've talked a lot about school shootings before on the podcast because these are things that happen in America, and they happen in America like nowhere else in the world. And a lot of people say that's indicative of America having a gun problem. Now, where I fall on this particular issue, just before we start getting into the specifics, is I'm not anti-Second Amendment. And again, I want to make that clear going in. Because, right, so for me, the Second Amendment is a wonderful thing to have enshrined in legislation, to have it as a protected right, that any weaponry, any firearms that the government could deploy against you, you are entitled to own to protect yourself from a tyrannical government. I mean, that is the Second Amendment in a nutshell. And I made this point on a previous podcast while you were away, Sam. I did one by myself. I pressed all the buttons and everything. And this is why I don't understand why people don't understand the Second Amendment. People say all of this nonsense. They say that this is how you spot an idiot immediately on the discussion of the Second Amendment. They say, well, there's no way the founding fathers could have predicted that there would be these weapons that just kill people and tear them to shreds. They could never have predicted that, and therefore we need to revise it. Now, first of all, point number one about this is that the way that it was worded by the founding fathers was that it was designed specifically to be future-proof, that no matter what weaponry the government had, you would always have the right as an American citizen to match them. It was deliberately worded that way. So this idea that, it wouldn't matter if the government had some sort of insane disintegration rifle technology. The premise of the Second Amendment is that you can have it to protect yourself. Okay? Now, that in itself, you might think that's a problem. I'm not even saying that is the right way to look at things, but that is deliberately how the Second Amendment was worded. Okay? And you'll get a lot of people who think they're being smart, fucking fedora tippers, who always come out and say, well, and I saw this comment in YouTube a few times as well. Well, why can't we have nuclear arms? Hey, why can't we have a nuclear missile? Fuck it, go get yourself a silo, buddy. Go buy it. You do it. But anyway, that's the premise and the principle of the reason why the Second Amendment is there. And again, you don't have to agree with the Second Amendment's existence, but to try and go back and get some perspective on why it should be abolished, because the founding fathers couldn't have predicted when it was deliberately worded so it would be future-proof, is incredibly stupid. So the other thing is that you'll see idiots say is, well, they didn't have automatic weapons back then.
Did.
Right? I'm sure you've heard this, right?
Yeah.
Which is, of course...
Didn't they have that? They had the fucking Gatling gun. Well, not the Gatling gun, but the one where you churn it out, that fucking turn one.
Yeah. Right, well, I'll show you exactly some of the guns from before.
Even I know this.
Before the Second Amendment was ratified. And you can see here, for example... let me just get you the link. Right, so there's this one. This is a Girandoni air rifle. Now, a Girandoni air rifle is capable, believe it or not, it doesn't look like much. It's capable of firing 22 rounds a minute.
It's just one every 3 seconds-ish.
Yeah,
not bad.
Yeah, not bad. 22 rounds a minute is an unbelievable rate of fire, especially for that time.
That was game-changing when everyone had muskets, and what was a musket? 3 a minute?
Yeah, like unbelievable. And in fact, there was a gun that was used by Danish special forces. The Danish Royal Guard apparently had 100 soldiers specifically issued with this, called the Kalthoff Repeater. The Kalthoff Repeater was so fast. Its rate of fire, there's no estimates on its Wikipedia page, but pretty fucking fast. It is its determination. This came out
unmatched until the mid-19th century, mate.
Yes,
fucking hell.
It was so ahead of its time, technologically speaking, that it wasn't matched until the mid-19th century. That's how fucking fast this was. And again, the Royal Foot Guards of Denmark sort of popularized this weapon globally. Some were shipped to America, if I remember correctly. Not a gun historian by any stretch, but I'm sure that's true. And certainly the founding fathers would have been well aware of the existence of these guns. They were world famous. Now, also as well, there were modified guns, numerous ones, that literally operated like a Roman candle almost, that you lit them and they fired bullets out. You know when you have like a Roman candle, it's pew, 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 like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was multiple rifles that were modified on that sort of theory that also were repeating automatic weapons that were deadly. And of course, as you talked about, there was the machine gun existed. They actually had what we would call a machine gun.
Yeah.
And it was the most popular one, the first one to ever really wield the term machine gun, was the Puckle gun. And I'm sure this is what you meant, that you were talking about. Yeah.
The Gatling gun thing.
Yeah. And I think this was invented in 1718 is when it was patented. So again, it's one of these ridiculous myths and lies that people try and get into, like when they want to dispute the Second Amendment. Like I say, the argument against the Second Amendment is you trust the government enough to never in history be tyrannical and be against you as a citizen, and you would never want to have the weaponry required to defend yourself. If you don't think that's a genuine risk, and I can understand why you might think that, but then you're totally free to be against the Second Amendment if that's your opinion. But to say these ridiculous things, they didn't have guns like that, they did.
They had like battleships, didn't they say you're allowed to use battleships? They literally said Second Amendment covers battleships. I'm sure I read that in one of these articles.
And look, here's another thing that you've got to consider. American history is pretty fucking unique. Never have you. Well, it's super rare throughout human history where a country of this size and success is founded principally on the overthrowing of another empire, and then they've completely gone independent and completely become successful and are now the world leaders in pretty much everything they do, certainly from a military perspective. So people have to understand American history as to why the Second Amendment exists in the first place. And again, you don't have to agree with the Second Amendment, but people don't even try to understand the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
And that frustrates me, because I live in America, and I used to say all the ignorant things. I used to say all of these things I'm correcting in others. I used to say myself. I'll admit it. I was completely ignorant. I used to sit over there in England, and I used to laugh at Americans. A lot of us do. A lot of British people do. I used to laugh at their silly laws about guns, and I'd be like, how idiotic. But I've never took the time to appreciate context. And now that I live here, and because I one day want to take the citizenship test, and I've read up on American history, and I've read up on American laws and how they've developed, I have to stand here and say, as somebody that loves the country I live in, I have to support the Bill of Rights, and that includes the Second Amendment. It's that simple. So I wanted to put that all out there, because I know this is a very emotive topic. This will upset a lot of people. Some people think the Second Amendment is the reason why shootings and tragedies like this occur. Now, here's what I'll also add to this. It seems absurd to me that America is a country where I cannot drink until I'm 21. But
get married and have a gun, though.
Yeah. You've seen it. We've seen footage of this. School kids who aren't deemed responsible adults in any sort of legal sense are able to buy weapons. You can go and defend the country. You can serve in the military. I think you need to put your perspectives aligned. If you can't handle alcohol, you certainly cannot handle a gun. And if you can't handle alcohol, and you can't, and it's agreed upon that a gun is far more responsible than alcohol to wield, you can't really hurt others with alcohol unless you get aggressive. Generally, it's a damage to yourself. If we agree with that, then it stands to reason you probably shouldn't be in the military at 16 either. So I definitely think the acquisition of guns in America is an issue. I would have no problem with it in my mind of it being 21 or above, which seems to me to be certainly a way we can start moving towards reducing school shootings. You'll never abolish them. That's the sad reality. You'll never abolish them. The genie's out the bottle. You could ban guns tomorrow. You could repeal the Second Amendment tomorrow, and there would still be school shootings, by the way. That's inarguable. So I think there has to be stricter checks. I support that. And we'll get into that when we talk about Trump repealing a bill that made it harder for mentally ill people to get guns. I think there has to be an age limit. And I certainly think the way guns are sold in America, there has to be a happy medium where you can still match the government tech for tech, but that tech isn't in the hands of a 19-year-old who's got a grudge and is going to school and wants to kill people. That, and sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, well, there was a waiting list. Oh, how long was it? 7 days? Like, come on. Come on. We can all agree that that's silly. So I think definitely what we need to start doing is just introducing just some sensible restrictions. And not restrictions in the sense that you can't have these guns anymore. There's no point in blaming the AR-15. I'm going to show you how the media doesn't even know what the fucking AR-15 is, right? But there has to be a way to stop younger people, emotionally unstable people, unwell people from getting guns. There has to be. And if you say there isn't, then I don't know what to tell you. I remember once Obama, and I'm not Obama's biggest fan, but he was a wonderful orator. And he did do some good things for America, whatever Republicans want to try and tell you. I remember him giving this impassioned speech to an open forum where he talked about how, they've stopped automobile fatalities by introducing legislation. So it includes, for example, side impact protection bars, making it so you have to have an airbag. These were all laws that were brought in. Speed limits, laws about seatbelts, laws about texting or using your phone while you're driving. All of these laws have provably reduced fatalities, and none of us think you're taking away my freedom to drive. So when it comes to guns, Americans do get incredibly touchy about that, and I understand why. Because if a big government was going to tyrannically take over, the first thing they would do is start bringing in limitations of weaponry. But what you can't be resistant to is having a sensible discussion and collecting data so we can at least start to think about why this is happening. And if you're resistant to that, then you have to take a little bit of the responsibility every time you turn on the news and you see these awful stories. That's the reality. So as somebody that supports the Second Amendment, I can say, hand on heart, the system right now is broken and changes do need to be made. But those changes do not have to mean you lose your fundamental rights. So, what happened, do you think, immediately in the aftermath of this year? It wasn't even in the aftermath, actually. Never have I seen a media this ghoulish. This will blow your mind, Sam.
I think I might know which one you're going to talk about.
Well, okay, I'll tell you. While this shooting was going on, media outlets were tweeting at people who were using Twitter as a means to communicate what was happening and let people know they were safe and alive. They were tweeting at them saying, "Hey, can we use your video? Can we use this tweet? Can we get an interview with you?" There's a ton of examples. Just you can see this one here. My little brother just sent me this video of the SWAT team evacuating his classroom. So scary, but glad he's safe. And you can see she's like tweeted, at all of these news outlets, right? Which is ridiculous. Even family members trying to get their 15 minutes of fame because, this is it now. Oh, somebody survived a shooting. Glad he's safe. But then if you look at the people who weren't trying to bait the media into picking up their story, there's a guy called Brody Logan who collated a ton of these. And you can just see here, if you go through this tweet, you can just see, look, hi, Aiden, really hope you're okay. I'm with ABC News. Could you DM me? There's a fucking active school shooting going on. You're asking...
Can you do me a favour, make some noise? Could we just have a Skype call really quick? It's alright if you whisper.
Do you know what I mean? And this is what, if we're talking about what the sicknesses within America, this is a huge part of it, by the way. The media is just as culpable as Second Amendment absolutists. I'll tell you why. You know why. But yeah, you can just see here. There was this. This is Alex from the Herald. Are you okay? Can you follow back so we can talk about what happened? Mate, he's got bullets whizzing past his fucking Hi, Adrian. I'm from CBS News. Can you follow me back so we can find out some information? Are you
Not even
okay?
my fucking name for a start. My name's Aiden.
Yeah. Another one. Hi, Adrian. Are you okay? We hope you are safe. Mind following back so we can hear more about what's going on. I work at CBS in New York. Are you okay? Are you okay? Please stay safe. Can CBS have permission to use this photo across our platform?
No.
You're asking him for copyright permission while this motherfucker's trying to survive. Is this real? And the answer to this is yes, it is. Yes, it is real. That while this person was fighting to survive, the media wanted to get the correct permissions to use the pictures and footage that they posted. Now, I'll tell you, I'm a journalist. I know what it's like to hustle for a story. This is grotesque. If you wake up as a journalist and if you're okay with that, you're scum. Not in a, I don't know, throwaway sense of the word. You are absolute scum. You have lost your fundamental humanity. You are not a person. I couldn't even imagine doing this. That to be more concerned about securing the rights to get the video to use before your rivals do over children's survival. And it's not an isolated incident. This happens all the time. Now, the media, as I said, it's really interesting. Whenever bad things like this go on, whenever unconscionable things like this go on, whenever the topic of school shootings are brought up, the media always takes like a slow backward shimmy and pretends they've got nothing to do with it. Now, everyone will tell you, every credible psychologist, psychiatrist, every person who understands the mechanics of the media, they have been saying for decades, after every school shooting that occurs, that if the media didn't make these people into celebrities, didn't publish their name, didn't publish their photos, this would actually reduce school shootings moving forward. It has been stated so many times. And they never have that discussion, the media. They never do a media blackout. And you can. I urge people to go. There was this. There's this really good opinion piece over at the Chicago Tribune. I urge people to go and read it. And of course, Chicago has a fucking perspective on gun murders like almost nowhere else in the world. And this is an associate professor of communications at Pennsylvania State University saying that since 1999, the year of the Columbine shooting, the first really mass-covered school shooting, and I'll, obviously this was at a time when we started getting 24-hour news cycles, 24-hour news channels, mass media coverage, internet coverage, and all the monetization that comes within. But since 99, there hasn't been a mental health professional who hasn't said we should really stop making these people into celebrities. The purpose of this hideous, destructive act is to get attention. Yet it's never been proposed. Like, as a journalist, it does stick in my craw a little bit that the idea about not reporting news that is happening out there should ever be a consideration. But let's be fucking real. This isn't a considered, measured coverage of a tragedy. you've just seen the fucking disgusting, grasping, greasy hands of the average modern journalist. No, this isn't measured coverage. This is shrieking, hysteria, political posturing on both sides of the fucking equation, both sides of the fence, and it is designed to drive traffic and revenue. And if they've got to turn this guy into a fucking pinup, a poster boy for being edgy and dark, they'll do it. They don't care. So the media never, ever, ever comes out and says, yo, we might have something to do with this. We might have a little bit of a hand in all of this nonsense. No, they go straight to the guns and the Second Amendments. Of course they do. They're not doing it because they genuinely believe that this is responsible. They do it because they attack those people because it's classic deflection. It's classic smoke and mirrors. Right. We can start getting into the show for real now because just to lighten the mood, I'll show you. There's an account I follow on Twitter. I urge everyone else does if you're into gaming. And unfortunately, Bowser pornography. Anyway, the account's called I know, Bowser from Mario pornography. He will post this about once a month. It's his thing. But anyway, it's called Gaming and Pandas. And Gaming and Pandas is a really funny fucking account. I love it. And you can see here, look, and this is just the perfect mockery of the media. This is a photo from the Kennedy assassination. And the tweet says, the guy leaping onto the back of the car is actually from the Dallas Morning News, telling Jackie Kennedy he's so sorry for her loss and asking if she'll follow him back to DM for some questions. Because this is the fucking... there's not even time for the tragedy to be fucking over anymore. Is there? Just straight in. So, Gaming and Pandas is a funny motherfucker, no doubt. Now, here's the other thing. When the media start talking about guns, I always cringe a little bit because I am by no means a gun expert, right? I have been ever since I moved to America and ever since I've been coming and visiting to America, I always take the opportunity to go to a gun range, try out some guns, familiarize myself with guns. And other than that, my gun knowledge comes from the Punisher comics, right? That's it. You know, it's very different as a British person where you might get like a fucking Remington shotgun, you know, one of those rifles for shooting grouse. It's very different to what you have at your disposal when you come to America. But it blows my mind how every time there's a shooting and the media tries to talk about guns, they clearly expose themselves as idiots and don't know what they're talking about. Now, I'll show you just one example here from MSNBC. There's a ton of these. This is all well and good clip this. But just look at this. We'll need you 3, 2, 1 X. The audio is important. But let's just be clear. This is a shotgun. I'm sure even if you do not use guns and do not understand guns, you can understand the difference between an AR-15 and a shotgun. Okay? I mean, you agree with that. That's everybody. You know, if you've played Doom, you would know what a shotgun is and how it differs from rifles, right? If you play Counter-Strike, you know, I mean, it seems incredible to me that not even a cursory fact check could be done here. But this is just a 7-second clip, so I'll let you 3, 2, 1 it, Sam.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Take a look at this video used to shoot a watermelon using an AR-15.
Feito.
Now, take a look at this.
You even see the shell pop off.
Like this, it's insane, isn't it? That we're trying to have a sensible discussion about guns, and we don't even know what guns are and what they do, and like, listen, like I've done. Because I'm not an American, I have tried to educate myself on the topic before voicing an opinion. My opinion might still be abhorrent and disgusting to a lot of Americans. Maybe I'm not assimilating, for want of a better word. But I see this and I despair. because the media are leading the charge here, and they're just not informed. There was another journalist from Vice tweeted this out, and again, it's stupefyingly ill-informed. This was in the aftermath. Dick's Sporting Goods have said they're going to stop selling assault-style rifles, and they're also going to raise the minimum age for anyone buying a gun to 21. Imagine that, Sam. Imagine that being like a radical stance. That you have to be 21 to buy a firearm.
Big change.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, as it happens, Walmart, I think, are going to mirror it. I had planned talking about this later in the show, but there are good things coming out of it. I fully support increasing the age to 21, and I'm a Second Amendment guy. So, you know, the whole thing about them stop selling assault-style rifles, it's a little bit weird because, as you'll see from this tweet from a Vice journalist, he's been in a few other things, Pace Magazine, The Classical. You'll see what he says here is, so somebody talks about the Dick's Sporting Goods things. This is Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh is a former congressman and radio host, a bit extreme for my tastes. And he says there's no such thing as an assault rifle. And second, this is a politically correct move that's going to hurt Dick's big time, and it should. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with that take, but I want to look at what Rob Rousseau says. And Rob Rousseau says the AR in AR-15 stands for assault rifle, dummy. Slight problem with this. It absolutely doesn't. And I remember when I was ignorant and thought I knew a thing or two about the American way of life and American culture and the Bill of Rights and guns, I said all the time, it's an AR. It's an assault rifle 15, right? And it's not. It doesn't stand for assault rifle. It doesn't stand for automatic rifle. It's from the company that popularized the design back when it was a civilian weapon. It's an Armalite rifle. And this guy gets corrected vehemently by everybody. And he keeps doubling down and saying... I'm
just going to keep denying it, despite the facts being right in front of me.
Yeah, he does. He literally keeps on saying that the AR stands for assault rifle. But if you go and look at, for example, let me show you the AR-7. I don't know if you've seen the AR-7. Let me just find it for you. This is the AR-7, right? Now, tell me a world where the AR-7, keep in mind, this guy asserts that AR stands for assault rifle. Look at an Armalite 7, the Armalite AR-7, and tell me how would that be considered an automatic assault rifle? Do you know what I mean? And there's plenty of weapons like this. That's just not what it stands for. So he then tried to wriggle out of it because Armalite is an abbreviation and does have the words assault rifle in it, but it's got a bunch of other stuff in it, right? So it wasn't just that they were manufacturing assault rifles or automatic rifles. So, but he just doubled down on it. He just doubled down and kept saying, no, this is right. I'm just going to keep saying it. And it's like, listen, again, it's that unwillingness to educate yourself. It's that unwillingness to learn about the topic before you talk about the topic and talk about what you think is right. And I just think, you know, how can these people be the watchmen? How can these people be the guardians?
Nah, I'm just going to keep screaming shit on the internet that's false, mate.
Yeah. Right, so now look, let me tell you again. I'll always lead up when we get into this type of thing with this whole but Richard Lewis, you're a right winger, you're an extreme right winger, you vote for Breitbart, you support Donald Trump, you wear MAGA gear. Yep. Right, okay, yeah, I get it, right. I think on the podcast we've been critical enough of the Trump administration that anybody could say that is demonstrably not true. But also the DNC is an absolute fucking sewer of a political organization, and I absolutely have no time for it and cannot take it fucking seriously. And of course, extreme leftists are some of the most repugnant, repulsive, joyless, disgusting, censorious people that exist on planet Earth right now, which isn't to say that extreme right-wing people aren't just as stupid with their no abortions and all this other nonsense, right? Like, there's just morons all over the place. But what I saw with this tragedy, I've never seen a tragedy politicized like this. I've seen them politicized. I've seen shootings politicized, of course, and the right, well, it's the goddamn immigration laws and it's Islam or whatever. On the left, it's the Nazis, it's the white supremacists, it's all this other nonsense. They've got their own little particular boogeyman that they like to, blame it all on. But what I've never seen before is everybody try and get on board with fake, like literally just faking the stories to push their own political agenda. This is while people were still fighting for their life in a hospital. This is while the death count was still going up. People were lying and faking tweets to suit their own political agenda. Here's what the right-wingers did. Bunch of alt-right people faked a tweet from a BuzzFeed journalist where they say, it's very much like the tweets we just showed you, but with one little difference. Was he white? Was inserted into it. And this tweet is absolutely fake. Alex Harris did not tweet this. Some alt-right dickheads who wanted to try and light a fucking torch, try and light a fire and make it a racial thing, made this up. So, sure, Alex Harris definitely did tweet at the person while there was a shooting ongoing. That's disgusting enough. We've talked about that. But they faked this to try and make it a racial thing. And this went everywhere. This was retweeted by all the usual suspects. Your Jack Posobiec's, like, oh, God, look. Why do they hate white people? So, it's not real, you fucking idiot. I could tell you. Just by reading it, it doesn't make sense, did it? Did you see the shooter? Was he white? By the way, school shooters, overwhelmingly white. No journalist would ever ask that question. The assumption would always be that they were white because it's 98% of school shootings are carried out by white people. So if you want to use data, by the way, which I know the right wing are incredibly fucking fond of, you wouldn't even ask that question. Okay? I'm not saying all murder is committed but school shootings specifically, go look at the numbers. So that journalist had to fucking actually put out a tweet saying that the fake tweet that was circulating wasn't actually real, obviously, because you can imagine the fucking level of abuse and the nutcases on the fucking internet that were coming out. And suddenly we're not having a debate about a horrible school shooting. What we're actually doing is we're attacking journalists for things they didn't fucking do. And talking about white genocide and all this other nonsense, which is nonsense. So you can see that it's just being an issue. She did an interview about it on NPR as well, which was completely clarified that, this tweet was not real. It just didn't exist. It was a Photoshop job. But then also, I think this is like another bunch of alt-right people. You know how there's these fake and obviously fake Antifa accounts, right? And what they do is, they try and make it look like they're really Antifa. And then it generates outrage about Antifa. Now, listen, my stance on Antifa is incredibly clear. They've been deemed a terrorist organization. If you're wearing a black mask and you're destroying public property and attacking people with baseball bats, you might not be the good guys. I don't know how else to fucking frame it for you. You're not the heroes that you think you are. You're just jumped up little ill-educated idiots that think that, that if you wield enough force, you can make the world a better place eventually. And let me tell you, all dictatorships, everything that's wrong with any hierarchical structure among humans begins with that premise, where it's okay to physically force people into our way of thinking because our way of thinking is good and righteous. And 50 years from now, it won't matter about the mass graves because everybody will be happier and better off. Has it ever worked, people? Has it ever worked? Where you're running around smashing people's heads in with baseball bats because they don't think the same way as you. Did you ever kill enough of them that we achieved peace on earth and harmony? Has it ever worked? No. Okay. So if you think that way, you are a fascist, officious piece of shit. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. National Socialists had nothing to do with fucking socialism. And anti-fascists has nothing to do with being anti-fascism. You know, it's that simple. So I'm not a fan of fucking Antifa. I think they're pathetic. But I think this is more pathetic. That, again, while people were trying to fucking find out what was going on, a disinformation campaign was set up to make it look like the shooter was a member of Antifa. And imagine how dangerous this is. They used a picture of a guy that wasn't the shooter and put it out there publicly, saying, please don't retweet this picture of Nicholas Cruz wearing an Antifa shirt. We don't need any more bad press. It's not him. Now, if somebody had identified that guy, like, someone could have killed him. And yes, people are saying it's obviously a troll. It's obviously a troll that got fucking picked up by people and spread. And that suddenly became, divorced from that tweet, that became the picture of the guy. People retweeted this. Supposed journalists retweeted this. Then, and I think this is the most repellent of all of the lies that the right wing spread about this, was that he was a dreamer. Not in the John Lennon sense.
It's not the only one.
Right? But as in, you know, an undocumented immigrant. And this spread, and it's a lie. It's a complete fucking lie. And it's a confirmed lie. I mean, look at that tweet in the middle. Shooter confirmed for being half Mexican, half Muslim. Devoutly pro-Bernie, pro-socialism, pro-Antifa, and anti-Trump. Do you know what I mean?
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
Isn't that just a fucking right-wing retard wet dream in a nutshell? I don't even know how you are half Muslim. It's a religion. How do you only go half in? It's a joke. So again, they're trying to stir up this anti-immigration hatred using a fucking genuine fucking tragedy to do it. And it's absolutely vile. But of course, the left are at it as well. There was a white supremacist group came out, and what they wanted to do was try and get some attention for their group, because obviously white nationalists are the lowest of the fucking low. They'll do anything to get attention. They don't care what they have to hijack themselves onto, even if it's dead white children that they're supposedly all about the future for. They'll do it, right? So they put it out there that the shooter, Nicholas Cruz, was associated with their group. And it got picked up. Naturally, the story got picked up. Now, as a journalist, you've got to fucking check. You've got to do investigations. You've got to assert whether or not this is real. Because it would be a very big deal if it was. Wouldn't it? This would be someone with ties to a white nationalist organization, a terrorist organization. It would be now a terrorist attack by a terrorist organization, because if you have a political ideology where you want to mobilize yourself and use force to gain attention for your movement and try and bring about change based on your movement. That is terrorism. But do you think that the mainstream media even bothered to check?
Why would they, mate? It's written down.
So even in an era where we know that the election had an unprecedented amount of social media influence on both sides, everybody was trying to tap into the zeitgeist of the tech generation. Even though all journalists are aware of this, and journalists have been pushing this Marussia bullshit story, which now, by the way, is like 13 people with Twitter accounts supposedly hijacked the American election. Okay. Seems like a good system then. Seems like a real good electoral system you've got, if that's even vaguely fucking possible. All right. And, there's some hilarious stories in there. We'll have to cover it on another show. Like 2 sides of a protest being funded by the same dude. Anyway, they are so eager to tell you there are racists everywhere and America is dangerous and Trump has empowered racists and the administration is racist, even though there isn't a single metric. Like, even when you look at the statistics closer, they're either partisan bullshit or there's a caveat. Like, there's an increase in hate crimes in New York, and we've had a 70% increase in hate crimes towards Jewish people. And then you go into it, and like 60% of that was accounted for by two people. One was a Jew, and the other was a fucking journalist with serious mental health problems. Oh, so not an increase at all then? Okay, well, let's not let the facts get in the way of the hysteria. So the ADL... that's the Anti-Defamation League, the same organization that bowed to political pressure from the Clinton administration to pretend that Pepe is the same as a swastika. Yes, that's the ADL. For some reason, the ADL is still fucking credible, despite the fact that even though they tried to back out of it at the last minute by saying on the fucking page, but not all Pepes are racist. They did it to appease the DNC because it was like, how this went down. There was a fucking phone call. Listen, Hillary Clinton's lost her motherfucking mind and is saying a frog is racist because Donald Trump Jr. tweeted a frog. Can we, can you fall in line and do that?
Any chance you don't make that frog racist?
Yeah, can we do it? And literally,
can we drone strike that frog?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we can say a cartoon frog that definitely isn't racist is really racist. I kind of feel like it might be. Listen here. Do you want Donald Trump to have 8 years in the White House? Well, no, obviously, because we're a partisan organization. Well, you better make that fucking frog racist and ruin that artist's life who drew that frog, yeah? All right, then. Tell Hillary better look next time.
All right, tell you what. Just write, it's sometimes racist.
So how the fuck the ADL is fucking credible at this point? It is a mind-blowing thing to me. But of course, they blindly reported the lie, absolutely without any cursory fact-checking whatsoever, that this was a white supremacist shooting done by white supremacists. Well. Oh, yeah, they've not took it down. Why would you take it down, Sam? Why would you take it down when you can tweet out a correction barely anyone's going to see and say, hey, we did our job? There's a narrative to preserve here, and that narrative is to make everybody afraid and everybody hate conservatives and everybody hate the right wing, which is what's hilarious, by the way, about the Russian investigation. I've seen people unironically saying, well, whatever the Russians were trying to achieve, even if they didn't get Trump elected, they wanted to have disruption to American society and divide American society. There has been nothing more divisive than the Democrats being unable to accept they lost an election. What could be more divisive than calling 50% of the population deplorable? What could be more divisive than saying if you wear a red cap with the words "Make America Great Again" on it, you are unequivocally a racist and it's okay to assault you because you're secretly a Nazi? What could be more divisive than saying there are white supremacists and racists everywhere? What could be more divisive than saying the Ku Klux Klan is back in record numbers when actually, when you look at it, all the memberships of all white nationalist groups around America are at the lowest they've been for fucking ever? What could be more divisive than controlling the mainstream media to actively lie to people and spin stories so nobody knows what the fuck is going on? And you're worried about 13 Russian oligarchs with Twitter accounts? Is this real fucking life? So yeah, let's just blindly report. Hey, everyone, are you a minority? Let's be scared, yeah, because there's white supremacists everywhere. He's not a white supremacist, though. You might want to correct that. But he might have been a white supremacist. It's a fucking joke. And if it was just the ADL, I'd laugh and go, they're them crazy Pepe motherfuckers. But it weren't just the ADL. ABC got in it. The Associated Press, Sam, blindly reported that he was a white nationalist. Just did it. Just followed up on it and said, well, yep, we've got news coming in. Yeah, what's the source on that? Somebody else? Okay, good. And where did they get it from? A guy on the internet? Is this? Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? And unbelievably, ABC News even went so far as to say they spoke to 3 former classmates of Cruz that all confirmed that he was a white nationalist. So it's like, well, hang on a minute, because he isn't a white nationalist. And the group came out and said, yeah, we were just trolling. He had absolutely no... So how has ABC got 3 people to back up a story that's false? It's almost as if it was lies.
Really
that they just
makes you think.
It does. It does. It's a chin stroker. It's a chin stroker. So then, like the Associated Press, who was meant to be the gold standard of independent press, if you rip a press release from the AP wire, that's meant to be golden. Like, it's meant to be checked, double checked, triple checked. It's come from other news sources that are double checked, triple checked. The AP wire, you know, it's like Reuters. It's like it feeds all the news outlets across America. That if you need to fill the space on a newspaper, you go to the AP wire and you pull the stories, and you don't need to invest the time in double checking and triple checking and all that, because it's been done for you. And they just blindly said this. They had to come out and make a statement saying that they spoke with the leader of the white nationalist organization,
who confirmed he was a lying rat.
They used a 4chan post as a source. I mean, is the media ever going to learn? 4chan owns you every time. You're the same fucking dickhead media that said this means white power. And there's photos of Obama doing it. You know, when are you going to fucking stop getting owned by internet trolls? But anyway, it's a long article to go through. But Politico, for all of their failings, that is the most comprehensive breakdown of how multiple media organizations falsely reported it was a white nationalist motivated shooting, an act of terrorism. Go read it. I urge you. If you want to be informed about this stuff, go and read that. All right. Well, you're like, fucking hell, Richard, you've gone a bit mental there. Surely that's the end of all the lies and bullshit. Oh, you wish. You wish. Did you see this statistic getting pushed around, Sam, that there had been 18 school shootings in 2018 alone?
I think I saw this get debunked.
Well, let me tell you, Sam, in the interests of a catchphrase, it didn't happen. There hasn't been 18 fucking school shootings in 2018. This is the Washington Post. Remember, democracy dies in darkness. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo-hoo, right? And even they're having to come out and say that, look, we can't get on board with these leftist talking points because this is just fucking flat out lies. Even Bernie Sanders backed that up. That's Bernie Sanders. He was potentially a presidential candidate. And he's blindly tweeting out that there's 18 school shootings in the US in 2018. There isn't. You can see it here. I'll read you what the Washington Post has got to say about it. A tweet by Senator Bernie Sanders included the claim, and it has been liked more than 45,000 times by Thursday evening. One from a political analyst, Jeff Greenfield, that repeated the claim had cracked 126,000 likes. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio tweeted it too, as did Cher, Alexander Williams, Misha Collins, and Albert Brooks. News organizations, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, Time, MSN, the BBC, the New York Daily News, and the Huffington Post all used this number in their coverage. And by Wednesday night, the top suggested search autocomplete after typing in 18 was 18 school shootings in 2018. It is a horrifying statistic, and it is wrong. It's just a lie. Do you see the problem we've got with the fucking media, guys? Do you see the problem? Do you see how a lie became fact? And at every stage, somebody can stop this. Somebody can just check and correct this. But it doesn't happen anymore. The process is busted. People do not want to look at the truth, look at the facts. They want that warm, fuzzy feeling for having the right politics, be it left or right. So you can, again, read the rest of that article. But you can see as well, like they listed the 18 school shootings, and it was like they went through and they debunked them all, like how 5 didn't even happen at school.
Yeah, one was like a suicide in an abandoned school.
Suicide. Yeah. 3 were like 2 people like turning up to fucking have a square off with each other. Like, you can go read it. The bottom line is that number is a fucking fabrication. It's a joke. It is a joke. That people jumped on this data point because it shows America to be this wild fucking West where school is dangerous. Now, listen, every time a school shooting happens, we've definitely got to ask the questions. What can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? But the idea that there's, dude, it's just turned the 1st of March. This was in the middle of February. Do you know what I mean? How many school shootings a week would that have been? It's just not plausible, is it? So there's definitely a discussion to happen, but you got to use real data points before you can even wade in. Saying like, okay, Richard, now there's definitely enough of the lies now. Well, no, because there was another lie. Well, it's not a lie per se, but it's a willful misinterpretation. So, Donald Trump, President of the United States, he got blamed for this. I mean, obviously he did. He gets blamed for everything, but he got blamed for this because they said, well, he made it easier for mentally ill people to buy guns. And you can see, I'll give you an example. Mother Jones talked about this, but a lot of other publications, brought this up because he actually repealed. The main reason that this blew up was because Donald Trump said there were so many signs that the Florida shooter was mentally disturbed and even expelled from school for bad and erratic behavior. You must always report such instances to authorities again and again. But he repealed an Obama-era gun regulation that made it more difficult for people with mental illnesses to acquire guns. He got rid of it. And media was banned from even attending the event. So you can read about that on NBC News if you want to. I think it was brought in after Sandy Hook, if I remember rightly. And basically that you had to have extra checks for your mental health and everything else, right? But why did Trump repeal that? Because, it's a good question, isn't it, right? Why would Donald Trump make it easier for mentally ill people who he apparently has no time for as a rule to get guns when the first thing he does whenever there's a shooting or anything like that, his go-to things to blame are usually mental illness, isn't it? Well, I'm going to tell you, ever since that regulation was brought in by Obama, there was tremendous pressure to repeal the rule because it was deemed discriminatory. Because you can't discriminate against people based on their mental health. And the ACLU, who I'm sure we all know definitely does not like Trump at all, around about the same time as the shooting last year, talked about how Trump repealed the rule, and they completely said, actually, this is how it should be. You cannot discriminate against the mentally ill. Simple as that. They say that if you were to put people who had mental illness into some sort of database, it would be unconstitutional. And at the time, they were not alone. Lots of people came out and said, you cannot discriminate against people for being mentally ill. That is a violation of their constitutional freedoms, their constitutional rights. Gun control laws should be fair. So Donald Trump did that. Now, don't get me wrong. Why did he do it? I don't think he did it because he wanted, he cares about mentally ill people. I'm not fucking naive. I wasn't born yesterday. Donald Trump did it because he wanted to appeal to the gun lobby and the Republicans and the NRA and all these people. That's why he did it. But it was a move that was backed by civil liberties organizations. And we all know liberals are saying you can never discriminate against people on the premise that they're mentally ill. We're not even supposed to joke about it. They're trying to make the word retarded hate speech.
Come on, don't take that away from me. You've taken all the other words.
I know.
You gotta leave me some in.
So ridiculous. Just ridiculous, but it was portrayed as if Donald Trump had done this mad, evil thing that nobody else in America was for. Now, again, I'm gonna say something that might be controversial here. If you've got a mental health problem, fuck you having a gun. Fuck you having a gun, and it's for your own safety. Maybe you get the other kind of mental illness where it's fucking, the dangerous kind, where you're a danger to others. Most mentally ill people are more a danger to themselves. That's statistically true. But on those rare and horrific occasions where it's like, I'm talking to God on my radio and he's told me that the time for purification is at hand. If you've got that kind of mental illness, I don't want you to have a gun. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure I wanted you to have a metal spoon if you got that kind of illness, mate, where God's telling you to cleanse the earth. I don't think you should be giving him cutlery.
So I'm just saying... All right. I'm just saying, maybe if you can't pass a medical, look, dude, if I was legally blind, I couldn't drive a motherfucking car. Although I did hear one time that Stevie Wonder had a pilot's license. That can't be real, but
Stevie Wonder don't count. Or Stevie Wonder gets to do whatever the fuck he wants.
He can't have a pilot's license, can he? That's got to be a joke.
I'm sure he can have one. I don't think he's allowed to fly a plane. I think he's allowed to hold one.
Well, if this is real, there's a headline that said Stevie Wonder flew and landed my plane safely.
Nah. As if he's had some sort of mad action movie landing. What if he saved the plane?
Like, who the fuck is flying Wonder Airlines?
I don't know though, mate, but think about it, right? You don't really... Actually, I was going to say you'd have to look a lot for the aircraft, but you do for landing. But what I'm saying is, if you could definitely take a plane in the air, and Stevie could fly our shit, like, 100%. If he knows where all the buttons on a keyboard are, mate, he could feel out the buttons in a plane. I wouldn't trust him landing it, like, that is, you probably do need your eyes for the landing. But if you want, you know, Stevie can hold the wheel while we're in autopilot, I wouldn't mind.
Ah, nah, fuck that. I'd tell him he's holding the wheel. That's what I'd do. Here you are, boy, you're doing it, Stevie. Fucking land this motherfucker. You're doing it, Steve. Fucking hell, come on. But anyway, the point is, like, you know, blind people don't get to fucking drive cars, right? You know what I mean? There's something. It's not that we don't like blind people. Obviously, no one's that fucking fucked up, right? The point is that you might hurt somebody if you do. So sorry, we're gonna stop you doing certain things. That's that. So, you know, maybe again, I'm sure a lot of Second Amendment people, you know, who see it as a right to have a gun no matter what, like, probably find that abhorrent. But come on, like, let's raise the age. Let's try and just take instability out of the equation. And again, you're in that 2020, are you? You want to stop fucking. You want to stop fucking school shootings committed by people who are mentally disturbed, but you don't want to discriminate against mentally disturbed people by saying they can't have a gun. Well, you know, come on. Like, one of these things isn't as bad as the other thing. So let's do it that way, shall we? So, and also as well, by the way, while we're talking about fucking lies because of this tragedy, the amount of disgusting Facebook and tweets that were just absolute grade A didn't happen bullshit were just horrifying to me. Horrifying that people would make up fake stories using their own children at a time when people's children were dead. So, you know, there was so many of these didn't happen that, like I said, I just find them repulsive, honestly. Like, you gotta have something really wrong with you. Like, does any of this ring true? So there was this one. A child shouldn't have to worry about this. My daughter came home from school one day crying that she needed new shoes.
Oh, yeah, I saw this one.
I thought that perhaps someone had made fun of her shoes, but no. She informed me that she realized during an active shooter drill that if she's hiding from the shooter, the lights on her sketches will give away her location. My baby is 8 years old and worrying about being shot because of her light-up shoes. That is the biggest load of absolute fucking baloney. That is weapons-grade balonium. That is just so fucking stupid. That's a didn't happen and a half, isn't it, mate? Come on. So you got that.
If it's true, you should fucking get ready to sign her up for the military, because she's going to be sick. I'll be spotted by the enemy with these light-up shoes. I need to get my camouflage paint out.
Yeah, fucking, I bet she's good at Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, you take up position by that cupboard. When he comes in, I'll throw a book at his forehead. You grab the gun and we're in.
I saw this one as well. Oh, God, I don't even know if I can be bothered. Like it just, these things just reek of lies. Like, I just don't get why people are doing this. Like, why to get Facebook likes or Twitter likes or retweets would you make stuff up like about this? So this is from a teacher. My fifth grader and I were conversing on the way to school this morning. As an educator, I wanted to be sure he and his classmates were taking the school safety drill seriously and not using it as a time to socialize and goof off. Have you guys practiced a lockdown drill in class yet? And the kid said, are you talking about an active shooter drill? They say yes. Which, by the way, these are things. Like, you can't believe these are things. But again, in a society where people have the right to have guns, obviously you're going to have drills about what to do if someone decides to misuse a gun. It isn't that crazy when you think about it in that way. But obviously, if you're from a country where you're not allowed to have guns and it's not a fundamental right that you have enshrined in legislation, then obviously it's going to seem a bit weird. But again, it's actually good practice. Anyway, yeah, we practice it. So tell me what you are supposed to do. The teacher is supposed to shut and lock the door, put the black paper over the window on the door. Then myself and 3 of the boys are supposed to push the table against the door. After that, all the class is going to stand behind us on the back wall. And the teacher asks, the class is supposed to stand behind who? And then the student goes, me and the 3 other boys. We stand at the front and they get behind us. I internally went from 0 to 100 real quick. My child is one of only 2 black children in a class of 23. I don't even know how you would get race from anything that's been said there so far.
Yeah, I would have just assumed that, like, my child is a badass and he wants to be in the front line. And it's like, why are you taking the front digs?
Right. So, being transparent, I immediately went to the why is my black son being put on the front line? So I asked before I verbally stated my thoughts. Why did you get picked to stand in front of everyone else if a shooter came in your school? I didn't get picked. I volunteered to push the table and protect my friends. So I asked, why would you volunteer to do that? If it came down to it, I would rather be the one that died protecting my friends than have an entire class die and I be the only one that lived. Father God, it took everything out of me not to break down. I still have a lump in my throat. 10 damn years old, and this has to be our baby's thought process in America. I'm going to wager that didn't happen. I'm just going to wager that. You know, if you want to make a point about how fucked up it is that kids are having to think about this shit, sure. But this is a didn't happen and a half, innit? Come on. And if it's true, as I said, that kid's a fucking baller. But it's not true. So.
And his 3 mates, everyone say this kid's a baller. Codwin, there's 3 mates who are standing up against that fucking
squad as also ballers, like.
Yeah, it did happen.
Now, and again, because you're like, oh, Richard, you're going after the left again. It was all a fucking ruse to make you look like a centrist.
Whipped it round, mate. Whipped it round and up.
I got to say as well, just when you thought it couldn't get more fucking retarded, it was spread around that some of the kids were crisis actors.
Mate, this happens every time, though, doesn't it?
I know. But, like, Sam, how can people, like, how do you get...
It's just confirmation bias from what I've seen, mate. People want to believe they are, so they find a kid, oh, look, there's an actor that kind of looks like his kid. Oh, look at this, right? The one that blows my motherfucking mind is when they go, look, this kid isn't even upset. That child has just watched his friends get shot in the head. How do you know what the fuck they're going to react to? What do you think they're going to do? Most people don't just cry as soon as they see something bad. Believe it or not, there's some trauma involved, almost like you go through some sort of shock. Weird you won't act normal when you see all your friends get popped in the head. Strange you don't just start crying like a normal reaction.
And, you know, I hate to say it, because obviously I think that I could like Alex Jones. I think he's a funny motherfucker. I think if Alex Jones didn't exist, you would have to invent him. I just wish he'd just leave this shit alone. Like, why? You
thought you would have left it alone after the last time, mate.
Yeah, after Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
Like, what? Do you know what I mean? Like, why would you? You know, look, if we all understand, like good taste, you know, good taste, and just give it some breathing room, let people grieve. Let people find out their loved ones are okay. In the same way that the disgusting, greedy, grasping, greasy journalists are tweeting at them while they're trying to survive, there's something very wrong with somebody that fucking says, while this is still percolating, it's the crisis actors.
No real kids.
And if you look at his name and you put it in IMDb, you'll find that he's got an actors page. But he hasn't been in any films. Now, the globalists will tell you that this means he's an aspiring actor. But we know that this is because he's a crisis actor, ladies and gentlemen. The whole thing is staged so they can take away your guns. So it's nonsense. It's such an awful fucking lie to put out there. And the fact that these kids were already going through the trauma of knowing their friends were murdered, it could have been them, whatever awful, dark thoughts they're going to have. They're now being attacked for being actors because you're predicating this lie based on, like, a photo of a guy that looks like another guy. Like, come on. I'm all for, like, digging into things. I'm even all for conspiracy theories. Certainly, have at them. I think, you know, some of them are fascinating. They're fascinating how they prevail, even in the face of sense and rational science. You know, like the moon landing stories, you know? Like, we all know, like, why were there set numbers on the rocks? There never was. There isn't. And set numbers aren't even like that anyway. Your brain is seeing something and making it something else. Well, look at the lighting. And look how it's all fucked up. Multiple scientists have explained how the lighting is. You know, why is the flag moving? And on it goes. And generations who really just should take space travel as a given come to it fresh and start looking into it. You know, there's a documentary about the film The Shining, which looks at extreme fan theories about the movie. And one of the extreme fan theories is that it's a confession by Stanley Kubrick to say he directed the fake moon landing. And it's all it's the semiology. If you follow the story of The Shining, there's even a bit where the kid has like a NASA jumper on with a rocket taking off. And it's Stanley Kubrick confessing that the moon landing was fake. Now, these people are fucked, aren't they? But it's your right to be fucked.
It depends how much they believe it. It's cool that they found all those Easter eggs.
No, it's amazing.
It's also more likely that Stanley Kubrick, if they are in there, put them in there knowing that people think he did it. Or to make people think he did it.
Yeah, and listen,
you know... People always say that about the Beatles. Remember the theory that Paul McCartney's dead, and there's someone who's replaced him? And, like, in a few of the albums, like, they made little Easter eggs, like Paul wasn't wearing shoes on Abbey Road, and, like, in Sgt. Pepper's, he's wearing, like, a different suit. It's almost like they know people are mentally ill, and they're like, let's wind up these people who are mentally ill and just say, I'm dead.
So... You know, it's crazy, isn't it? And it's fine. You know, it's like I say, but it has to be like a statute of limitations on it, and it has to not be dangerous. Like, no one's gonna fuck up Buzz Aldrin, right? The last person who confronted Buzz Aldrin about the moon landing being fake got smashed in the grill because Buzz Aldrin. Oh, he certainly did, mate. Let me show you. Buzz Aldrin is still hard as fuck. As you'd
I'm pretty
expect.
sure as well, Buzz Aldrin just doesn't go to jail. Like, unless he's being super unreasonable. You don't send Buzz Aldrin to jail for punching someone in the head, do you?
Definitely don't. Let me see if I can find
yeah. Alright, that was unreasonable, but you have been on the moon. So this
for
you, Buzz.
This conspiracy theorist have been following Buzz Aldrin around for ages, right? Let me just see.
Right. So I was gonna say, it weren't even like a one-time thing, like a guy.
No. And he was a moon landing conspiracy guy, and he kept turning up whenever Buzz Aldrin was doing, you know, doing his appearances, and he would fucking go to him like, when are you gonna admit? When are you gonna admit that the moon landing's fake, right? So Buzz Aldrin just had enough, and he just fucking smashes him in the jaw. And as I said, violence against opinions, it doesn't really appeal to me as a rule. But I got to admire this. Like, Buzz Aldrin's had enough. Yeah. So yeah, just 3, 2, 1 and play this.
3, 2, 1, go.
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself. Away from me. You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
Dig.
Oh, man, that was flush as well.
Right, he's still got it. Like, Buzz Aldrin has still fucking got it. He's a fucking machine. Love that guy.
Probably can't knock him out as well, mate, because if he can go through G-force, his brain's been shook to bits anyway, so I doubt you're laying him out. Probably got a chin like Nate Diaz, this guy.
But Buzz Aldrin's a fucking legend. Like, so definitely all about that shit, right? But anyway, you know, like, look, there's got to be a statute of limitations on conspiracy theories, and they cannot be dangerous. You cannot, at the height, with tempers and passions inflamed, dead children, America having its identity crisis once again, you can't just go out there and say, you know, them kids that are saying we should maybe not have guns, all actors, go get them. Go get them, internet. Like, what is that about? That is so fucking beyond the pale. So yeah, that's also what didn't happen. These kids obviously are not fucking actors. Now, one of the things that got lost in all of the noise, because again, we come to the Second Amendment, we come to guns, we have the media out there pumping all this inane, banal shit into your brain so you relent and see it their way. One of the things that hasn't been as actively promoted is the number of system failures that occurred for this school shooting to happen. And I will tell you, it's unprecedented. Yeah. It's unprecedented. In a time when we're aware that these tragedies can occur, at a time when we are aware that there are disturbed people out there with access to guns and we need to be vigilant, we need to protect each other. Hell, at a time, right, when we're supposedly meant to be on high fucking alert, right, because, Islam's going to kill us all, the terrorists, right, like, well, okay, if we're all on fucking high alert, right? Let's surely we must have institutions that can shut down a kid with a gun. Surely. But nah, turns out not. So the first failing is that of the legal system. You'll remember I covered the story about the Call of Duty swatter, right? By the way, bar got raised. I don't know if you saw the internet swatted a 12-year-old. Don't know if you saw that.
Reasonable.
Probably going to do a video on that when I get time. But anyway, that Tyler Barris or whatever his name was, that guy was so fucked up. He'd got out early after being, sentenced before for bomb threats. He had a restraining order from his own grandmother. He was living in like assisted and a home for people who just was slipping through the cracks. He was one stage above homelessness, and he was still doing bomb threats and swatting people. I hate to say it, but sometimes people cannot be rehabilitated. You just got to put them away somewhere so they don't fuck with y'all. That's it. That's unfortunate. That might sound extreme. That's not something human. Aren't you a member of Amnesty International? That's a bit fucking crazy. Sometimes, rare occasions. But if you will not stop being a danger to other people, what do we do as a society? We've only really got two choices. Put you in an institution of some sort where you can have some sort of life. Maybe one day you get rehabilitated, but mostly we put you away for the benefit of society, of people who do not want to be hurt by that person, or we kill you. That's it. Sorry, you're too fucked to live. That's it. It's safer this way. It's the only two ways we've got. We haven't come up with anything better. There's no cure. There's no fucking lobotomy shit. This is how we deal with it as a society. So that guy shouldn't have been on the fucking street to make fucking threats in the fucking first place, and a guy got killed because of it. So imagine how fucked up the system has to be for this school shooter to even be there on that day firing that gun. Exhibit number 1. Police had been called to the shooter's home 39 times in 7 years. They were for child abuse, abuse of the elderly, domestic disturbance, breach of the peace. This guy was out of his fucking gourd. All his neighbors knew him. This guy had a fucking serious problem. 39 call-outs. That's almost unprecedented.
Yeah, I tell you what, after the 35th, I might start thinking this kid's got some issues.
Yeah, maybe. Right?
All that bloody video games in it.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't possibly just be a bad hombre, use Trumpian language. Right? So 39 times he has eluded being put into a facility of some sort to prevent this 39 times. I'm sure not every time the police were called it would have warranted being locked up. One of those did it? How's this kid been able to get away with it?
Yeah, unless that's 39 counts of littering, something should have happened.
Mate, even if you litter 39 times, right, you're not going to learn. You've had your fines, come on. You're being a bit of a cunt about it, right? 2 weeks in the gulag, that'll fucking get your head straight. Do you know what I mean? It's mind-blowing.
Wouldn't get away with fly tipping 39 times.
But it doesn't stop there, mate. I wish it did. I wish I could stand here and go, all right, sounds like a bit of a juvenile delinquent who hasn't been in trouble with the law. Right? Well, the FBI got tipped off because he said on YouTube, in a YouTube comment that belonged to him on an account, it's been verified as belonging to him. This is reported in NBC News. He had an account called Nicholas Cruz, and he wrote on a YouTube video, I'm going, just as a comment, I'm going to be a professional school shooter. This was last September. And it was on a video by a Mississippi bail bondsman who just made video about what it's like to be a bail bondsman. So the bondsman took that seriously and said, listen, there's a guy on my account who has said they're going to be a professional school shooter. This is in September. All right. So that went to the FBI. Obviously, that's a federal investigation, and they did nothing about it. That was that. I'm guessing they didn't cross-reference the 39 times he'd been visited by local law enforcement. It's just crazy. It says here, it was not immediately clear why the FBI would not have been able to identify the author of the post if the username was in fact his real name. He didn't even attempt to disguise himself. Well, surely with all the resources of the FBI as well, but if you post on the internet, the FBI will find you, right? And if you've hidden yourself with, VPNs or whatever else, they can just go to your, ISP. They'll find you. You're not hiding from the FBI, CIA, American intelligence. It's not happening. So the FBI were tipped off about this in September. Didn't do anything. This was also reported on ABC, where they literally called out what was an FBI intelligence failure, I suppose, for want of a better phrase. And they admitted that protocols were not followed. So in other words, because I know, because I've had this, there's a kid, and some of you who follow the channel might remember this. There was a kid who was pretending to be fodder and doing a bunch of crazy shit, and he spammed my Twitter accounts, calling me Leechard Ruiz, and saying I will shoot up a school unless you release a story that I'd sent you. So he sent me a deliberately fake story pretending to be someone else, wanted me to put it out to get back at fodder by pretending to be fodder, and then tweeted at me saying he was going to shoot up a school. So I did what any sensible person would do. I found out who this person was, confronted him, showing I know who you are. This is unbelievably dangerous. I reported it to Twitter. All his accounts got shut down. They've obviously got protocols they have to follow. And I said, that is not something you ever fucking joke about. And I use my judgment on that situation. And like I say, I reported it every time. So Twitter can use its judgment on that situation. But basically, that was that. Reported it. Funnily enough, when we had all that going on, people actually messaged me saying, why would you report it to the FBI? How dare you? How triggered can you get? The kid's just joking around. I'll tell you this, I don't play when people are threatening to shoot other human beings. Fuck that.
Imagine if you didn't report it though and the kid did it. Of course, it definitely would have been your fault then. Richard, how couldn't you have reported this?
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, you're going to the FBI, mate. Simple as that. So, nothing came of it. But like I say, I've never heard from the guy since. He doesn't live in America, so I don't know what they could do. I guess he could get extradited. But he was trying to pose as an American. It was a fucked up situation. I didn't hesitate to, first of all, find out who the person was, confront them about it, make sure they weren't a risk or threat, and then pass it off to the proper authorities. That's the only way to do things. And yes, he was upset, saying you're going to ruin my life. Sorry, mate. I can't take the risk. Sorry. And I urge anybody, if you ever see anybody threatening to shoot up a school, if they're messaging you, even joking about it, you have got to take that seriously. Yeah, the people are saying, "Oh, you're a snitch," blah blah, like whatever. Don't give a fuck. My conscience.
Snitch.
Yeah, I know. My conscience is clear. I told him I'm going to the FBI. Report was filed. I'll sleep well at night knowing no one's dead. So thank you very much. Anyway, the FBI put out a statement saying that they did fail. That it was a failure. And you can see here on what they put out. So on January the 5th, 2018, a person close to Nicholas Cruz contacted the FBI's public access line, which is a tip line, to report concerns about him. So this isn't even the YouTube guy. This is a secondary tip. The caller provided information about Cruz's gun ownership, his desire to kill people, his erratic behavior, and disturbing social media posts, as well as the potential of him conducting a school shooting. Under established protocols, the information provided by the caller should have been assessed as a potential threat to life. Do you think? The information then should have been forwarded to the FBI Miami field office, where appropriate investigative steps would have been taken. We have determined that these protocols were not followed for the information received by the PAL on January the 5th. The information was not provided to the Miami field office, and no further investigation was conducted at that time. The FBI Director Christopher Wray said, "We are still investigating the facts. I'm committed to getting to the bottom of what happened in this particular manner, as well as reviewing our processes for responding to information that we receive from the public. It's up to all Americans to be vigilant." It don't make a fucking difference how vigilant we are if you don't go and fucking fix it, by the way. It's up to all Americans to be vigilant. When members of the public contact us with concerns, we must act properly and quickly. We have spoken with victims and families and deeply regret the additional pain this causes all those affected by this horrific tragedy. All of the men and women of the FBI are dedicated to keeping the American people safe and are relentlessly committed to improving all that we do and how we do it. You've had 2 tips about this guy. He's been visited by local law enforcement 39 times. I've got to say, maybe the FBI is either too thinly fucking stretched or your priorities are out of whack. There is no way that on that fateful day, that kid should have been in that fucking school with a gun. He's been talking about it for ages. He's been putting comments up on fucking YouTube. You know this. You have a file. Everybody has said this guy is a wrong and he's, you know?
Yeah, even in, like, before they identified the school shooter, like, everyone in the school was saying, they were saying to each other, I bet it's him, I bet it's him.
Yeah, that was true. As soon as the bullets started popping off, kids were saying, we know who this is. It's him. Now, this is where it gets really bad. I mean, really bad. People have talked a lot about, you know, well, schools are always going to be right targets because there's no security. This school had security. So let's talk about another
this
failure. Right? And this is just so unacceptable to me. I think this might be one area on the show. I think I'm going to go too far here. I can feel it building. I'm so fucking angry about it. I think I'm going to say silly things, but I don't give a fuck, mate, because you got to keep it real. So this is the sheriff, the deputy, the armed deputy that was there at the school at the time of the shooting, and called Scott Peterson. And while the massacre was going on, he didn't go in. He was armed. He was there. He knew a shooting was in progress. He knew children were dying inside that building. And this person who was sworn an oath to protect and serve has let children die because he didn't want to risk his own life. This has become a very divisive topic for some reason. And I've seen a lot of people say, hey, who wouldn't want to, like, why wouldn't he want to be safe? He was only armed with a handgun. There was a lot of media coverage saying, you know, oh, the AR-15 has a higher velocity.
Mate, that is so mentally ill, isn't it? By saying as if because the bullet would get there 0.0005 milliseconds faster, you wouldn't be able to kill him. Believe it or not, it doesn't come down to people shooting at the exact same time.
Well, I take some deep breaths. I'm gonna try and find you that tweet, because it is.
People think fucking PUBG is real, mate. People who play too much video games, they think bullets are gonna drop across the fucking school. Like they're so mentally ill, they don't understand how it works. Like,
yeah, it was insane. So I'm still looking for that tweet. I had it in my likes. Thank God they're bringing in bookmarks, by the way, so people can't be chiefing on my fucking likes and saying, "Why do you like this?" No, I'm just bookmarking it, mate. Well, why? But like is a sign of indulgence. It's not. I'm just bookmarking it, mate. I won't have to deal with that anymore. Where the fuck is it, dude? Fuck me, this happened a while ago. Let me just see. Hang on. Yeah, here it is. I got it. February 23rd. So this is on MSNBC, where a guy we've had on, we talked about on the show before, Lawrence O'Donnell. Lawrence O'Donnell is the guy that famously was the one who was screaming, I think, "Stop the hammering!" You know, that video went out.
no,
So, yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, so he said a bullet fired from an AR-15 travels 3 times faster than one from a handgun, and yet the president and the NRA thinks giving teachers guns will stop a school shooter. I mean, this is so stupefyingly ignorant to the issue. And a lot of people try to defend this deputy by saying he only was armed with a handgun. You can go and find that for yourself. So listen, a precision shot from a handgun, a precision shot from a handgun by a trained officer will still do the damage that a bullet will do at a suspect, a perpetrator that isn't wearing body armor or a helmet and isn't trained in the use of an AR. A trained person with a handgun at close quarters will be more dangerous than somebody who's untrained with an AR at close quarters. This is a fact. This is just reality that we live in. The areas where you would have a disadvantage would be if this person was in an elevated, territory and had cover, and you had to sort of close that distance. That's when you're at risk. Up close, a trained officer with a handgun should be able to neutralize any threat of an untrained child, effectively with an AR. This is the discussion about which bullet travels faster is completely ridiculous. And this is where it gets to the controversial part. And obviously I can see people in the chat sort of understand the meme potential in it, because effectively what the media was trying to say was that basically firearms are a game of paper, rock, scissors, where, he's got an AR, so he can't die. That's it. Obviously, it's not true.
In real life, a bullet's a bullet. It doesn't matter how much damage it does. Pretty much whatever bullet lands first is done.
So again, let me tell you that this deputy, Scott Peterson, who stood outside, refusing to do his duty, refusing to go and save children's lives, despite having sworn an oath to do just that, should it ever be needed and should he ever be called upon, he is indefensible. He is indefensible. There is no defense for that. If you're going to wear a uniform, if you're going to put on a badge, there's a reason that it says protect and serve. And sure, self-preservation might be something you might want to think about. But what an insult to all the fucking fallen officers down the years who died trying to stop bad people doing bad things to innocent civilians. What, you're not fit to wear that badge. Resigning doesn't cover it. This person should be investigated. There should be some. I'm serious here. This is a disgrace. This is a fucking absolute disgrace. If you do not feel that you have the fucking fortitude when called upon to do your fucking duty, take that badge off, take that uniform off, and go and do something else. Because we can't have people like this in the armed forces or in the police. You have to be able to answer the call to protect life. I couldn't even imagine. Like, listen, I know Donald Trump said, I would have rushed in, right? Like, he's a fucking draft dodger. So I don't know how he's got the nerve, frankly. But equally, I know many people out there that aren't trained officers of the law that would have tried to do something. That your option is risk your life or watch children get massacred.
I saw teachers do it without being armed, running at, barricading doors themselves, blocking ways in. We've seen on other attacks people who chase after gunmen with their own gun or save people there, tackle someone with a gun.
And I think there was a tweet which really sums it up, and it sort of spoke to my anger when I read that, because I mean, who knows which children are still alive today if this guy goes and does his job? Because again, if you're a trained officer of the law and you can't stand up to that sort of threat, then I do not know what you're doing. And even if you had failed to neutralize the threat, you are morally, ethically, probably legally, I would even say, obligated to go and fucking try. But there was they had one of the kids that's been the kind of a spokesperson for anti-guns and everything in the aftermath come out and actually defend that deputy. And again, it's indefensible. I couldn't even look that guy in the eye. I can't even imagine. Like, just what a fucking worm. Look, you want an easy detail? Go be a fucking mall cop. This is probably the one time in your life you're ever going to be in this fucking situation, and you chose to let children die so you can go home and spend time with your wife and your kids, right? You let other people's kids die. So when you sworn an oath to not let that happen. But anyway, there was this tweet from Arthur Schwartz, because the Hill was talking about how one of the kids was coming on and defending the officer who didn't enter the scene, saying who wants to face down the barrel of an AR-15, as if the AR-15 is the deadliest weapon that ever existed. It is still a semi-automatic rifle. Anyway, and he said, I watched from my living room window as the World Trade Center buildings collapsed with my friends and colleagues inside. My NYPD and FDNY pals that died that day probably didn't want to be inside the towers. The media are making these kids say foolish things. Please stop. And it's true, like, if you think back to September the 11th and you think about some of the shit that went on that fucking crazy day, and people running into buildings that they knew, were not structurally intact. The first responders who weren't police officers and weren't firefighters that ran in and inhaled all sorts of cancer-causing agents from the brick dust and everything else. You don't ever want to be in that situation, but your fundamental humanity and connection to mankind should kick in. And you should want to try and help people in need. And we all know how many firemen lost their lives, and we know how many police officers lost their lives, and we know how many people were just trying to help, and paramedics and first aiders lost their lives and are still losing their lives because of what happened on September the 11th, because of the diseases and health problems that were caused by the complications of being at ground zero. And I just can't even imagine sitting there listening to the sound of round after round after round being pumped into children's bodies, and you having a gun and a badge and the office to go in and put a stop to it, and you sit there and do nothing. I cannot imagine that. I cannot fathom the thought process. And like I say, I don't know why it's a controversial thing to say, because I think it's one of the most awful things to come out of this story. I mean, I really do.
Wasn't there multiple officers as well? Not just one. I'm sure there were other.
There was others officers nearby as well. Yeah. Yeah. So, just awful. And I hope there's consequences for that individual. Like I say, you can walk away from a job like that at any time. But here's another systematic failing that I think needs to be talked about and hasn't had the attention it deserves. Donald Trump, you saw it himself. He tweeted him out. Guy was mentally ill. This is why we must report the mentally ill. Okay, good. Right. What do we do with the mentally ill in America? How do we treat the mentally ill in America? What if somebody is mentally ill and everybody knows that he's mentally ill and they need treatment? Well, we've seen how the police failed, the FBI failed, the local armed guards at the school failed. Well, it should come as no surprise to let you know that the mental health services failed. In fact, he was known to mental health services. And as a youth had problems, and then when he turned 18, it was suggested this guy should probably get some form of mental health assistance. He isn't well. Well, he was refused. He was refused the services. He was refused the care when he turned 18. So again, a long time before any of this happened. Wasn't deemed necessary to get this guy some mental help. This guy who was clearly unstable, juvenile delinquent, violent history. And, now we've got 17 people dead. So the idea that you can fucking distill this down to, it's because we've got too many guns in society. That is a systemic failure of epic proportions. And each one of those stages, each one of those systems that failed could have stopped this tragedy, Second Amendment or not. And you cannot deny that, and you cannot dispute that. So don't come at me and tell me it's because he had access to guns. Because gun or no gun, that kid should never have been... First of all, he should never have been able to get a gun. You've got to put some checks and balances in there. I might argue that somebody that's been visited by the police 39 times is known to the FBI might not be a candidate to have a gun.
You mean, you'd think as soon as they go on an FBI list, they're not allowed guns, and if they already have one, they're being confiscated, right. Surely.
I'll just fucking say it. Is anyone out there upset about the no-fly list? Are you upset about the no-fly list, NRA? Are you upset about that? Or do you want crazy motherfuckers to fly on planes? People who said they like to blow up planes. Would you like them to be on your plane? Would you like them to be in business class next to you while you're flying over to fucking give a politician a brown envelope? Would you like that? No one is upset with the no-fly list. There's some people who probably shouldn't be on with the fucking planes. I mean, shit, we talk about that on the podcast all the time. I mean, sure, we say kids mostly, or support animals, but does anyone have a problem with the no-fly list? I've never heard anybody say that the no-fly list is unconstitutional. It's a problem. Never. So, do you think there should be a few people on a no-gun list? Is that all right? Can we do that? Again, we ain't even talking about big government coming in and making you jump through all these hoops. We're just talking about this guy. We're talking about guys who speak of their admiration for ISIS and how they want to have a jihad. There's been examples of that in the past, by the way. Go back and look at the Obama administration. They had issues with this, where there was people who were pledging allegiance to ISIS, literally walking into gun shops, and the FBI were like, well, he's bought a gun now. We can't do anything about it. We've just got to monitor the cunt. I mean, is that what it takes? Do we need to get, if the first name's on the no-gun list, a Muslim, does that help? Does that help NRA? I don't know anymore. But there is no way on God's green earth this guy should have had access to a firearm. But regardless, the issue isn't the gun in his hand. The issue remains that that the ability to stop him has systematically failed every step of the way. Mental health failed. Local law enforcement failed. FBI failed. An armed guard at the fucking school failed. Those institutions need to be looked at way before we start talking about the Second Amendment, in my humble opinion. So, Donald Trump. He's full of solutions, that guy. In fact, actually, just before we get to that, right? Can you imagine being a Donald Trump supporter? Right, and your daughter was killed.
This was fucking mental, man.
Because this will just give you an idea of just how divided the country is and how nothing is sacred. Not even the death of a child is sacred. So there's a guy called Andrew Pollock. He lost his daughter Meadow in the shooting. And he posted a picture of him, obviously in a state of distress, holding up her picture on the phone. He was doing interviews with the media saying he couldn't believe she was gone. And he made the fateful error of wearing a Trump 2020 t-shirt. Now, listen, I don't know how to break it to you, but despite Donald Trump being Donald Trump, and despite Donald Trump being president, and despite America being America, and despite all the things that happen while Donald Trump's been president, there's a lot of people that want Donald Trump to get 4 more years. I don't think it'll happen. But there's a lot of people that want Donald Trump to carry on. And I don't think that makes them bad people. I don't think that makes them racist. I don't think that makes them evil. I think that's their political choice. And the idea that everybody is evil if you support Donald Trump and want Donald Trump to get in again and do another 4 years in 2020, again, this is part of the problem. You can't just write people off like that. But even if it was true, even if supporting Donald Trump made you a piece of shit, and it was demonstrably true, that actually they all were racist, they all were deplorable, they all were bad people. Maybe the time to point that out isn't the day after their daughter has been killed with a gun by another student, and they are trying to get media attention to their mourning, their plight. Maybe leave it. Give it a few weeks, eh? Let them bury her, maybe. You know? Nah, we're not going to do that. I'll show you some of the replies here, Samothy. I picked out some of the best ones. Here we go. One reply here. I'm sorry for his daughter, but wearing a shirt for a politician who will do absolutely nothing in response to his daughter's death is very ironic. Can we dial down the irony for a bit? Like, can we point out the irony later, maybe? Yeah, okay, cool. Why not point out things that we've shown are kind of a little bit silly? This tweet, Trump was the one who made it easier for mental people to buy gun. He reversed what Obama did, blame him. Right? Okay, sure.
I like that guy's name is just Truth, Not Lies.
Yeah. Fucking...
Yeah, dudes.
And
also he wrote, why is it is easier to buy gums?
Yeah.
Where can you buy gums? Who's got gums going? I'll take a set of gums. Like, you never know when you might need them.
You might need them. You might want to become a journalist that focuses on League of Legends, for example.
I could do some banging interviews, like.
Right. I don't know what this one means. You can see they're all so badly written out. I'm unforgivable. I agree.
Yes.
But it's a little hard to feel sorry who supported this administration and its racist and its NRA supporting policies. I feel sorry for the daughter, but not for him. He probably doesn't make the connection behind his party's policies and what happened to his child, as if there was never a school shooting before Donald Trump existed. Pretty crazy, right? There was this one bit more plain and direct. I feel sorry for the daughter, not for him. The idea that we shouldn't sympathize with him as a parent who lost a child, the most harrowing and awful thing you can go through ever. But yeah, we shouldn't sympathize with him because he's got a Trump t-shirt on, right? Makes him a bad person. This one was my personal favorite, if you could call it that. Perhaps you can explain to me what this guy means. Is that? No, it can't be. No, it is. Blood on his hands.
What?
Why
What
does
do you mean? Mate?
Why does the father have blood on his hands? I don't get that. I'm not too sure. And then of course, just it's sort of a continuation of the blood on his hands thing. But you can just picture the kind of piece of shit that would just type something like this to somebody. His party has made it clear that it is willing to pay the price of children's lives to protect guns. I wonder when he voted if he realized he would be one of the people that had to pay most dearly. It's good that his daughter died. Maybe he will learn a valuable lesson. Can you imagine typing that? Imagine typing that to a guy whose daughter just got killed. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine being that person? And if you look at his bio as well, he's a dad and husband. So, imagine being a parent and lacking the humanity to say, well, your kid should die, actually. It's your fault. That'll teach you. Imagine it. It's all right, though. He's got the wrong politics, that guy. So, okay. Donald Trump came up with this unique solution to this problem, Sam, because Donald Trump, as we know, he is a genius. He's really smart, I believe. And his idea was arming teachers. Because apparently, if you arm teachers, they can shoot the kids with the guns before the kid with the gun shoot the kids.
I see a bit of a flaw in this one, though, mate. What if the teachers with the guns start shooting the kids without the guns?
Right. Now,
then you're going to have to give the kids guns. And then if all the kids got guns and the teacher's supposed to shoot the kids with guns, everyone's just going to be shooting each other, mate.
Now, here's the thing. I don't know if you ever seen that episode of The Simpsons where they talk about, the snakes and where the snakes overrun the schools. So then they release a type of animal to eat the snakes. And then they're like, but now we're overrun with the fucking thing. And then they go, it's okay, we'll release gorillas to eat them. And then now we're overrun with gorillas. And they go, but don't worry, the winter will kill all the gorillas. So, you know what I mean? It's like, guys, seriously, we're going down a fucking rabbit hole here. Now, listen, the media made this out to be a little bit more absurd than it is. I believe in Israel, I think I heard that some teachers, it's an optional thing in Israel, and obviously they've got to. But the idea that it's because the teachers are armed, we can look at that as a data point and say, that's where we've been going wrong. It's not all the other stuff we just talked about. It's ridiculous to me. But look, so we actually just had it in Georgia. Just here in Georgia, a teacher tried to fucking shoot himself.
Bruh.
And let me see if I can find that for you.
If you're gonna do that, can we not do it at school?
I know. Can we? Yeah. So yeah, this is it. This literally happened the other day, and I was like, well, yeah, let's give these people. Can I just say something? And this might seem like a little bit of a flippant point, but have you ever met a teacher who wasn't a train wreck?
Yeah, true.
Like, I'm being real. People are gonna go, Richard, you're so funny. This is the comedy. Have you ever though?
The ones that you liked were like just mess degenerates that were somehow living as teachers, and then all the other ones just hated kids. It was either one or the other. They were either so not arse, so they didn't hate kids yet, or they were so arse, now they hate kids.
Yeah, like I never met a single teacher that didn't have like a secret fucking drink problem or like a home marriage, or they were dipping their hands in the cookie jar with the kids at school. Like, I literally don't think I ever met a normal teacher. I say this of all my friends that went on to become teachers. I was like, well, obviously he did. He loved the fucking sauce in the morning. There you go. Look, people in the chat going, yeah, my parents are teacher. Can confirm, it's true, isn't it? Because they're overworked, they're underpaid, they have to deal with people all day that fucking just don't respect them. It is a tough job. It's no wonder there's a lot of people involved with it, have other issues going on. And like, because they're so underpaid, they work themselves into the fucking ground. I mean, you're never kind of off work, you're always marking papers or something.
Yeah.
So whatever, right? But yeah, so maybe teachers aren't the ideal candidate to be armed.
I mean, also, and it was like, if I'm a teacher, I definitely don't want that burden on my shoulders. I already got to teach these motherfuckers. Can someone else deal with people with bullets? Like, why have I got to be popping heads? Who am I, Lara Croft Teacher Edition? Fuck this. I'm going home.
Yeah, well, that's it, man. You got to teach them how to fucking live, but you might also have to teach them how to die. Like, just fucking pop.
This, kids, is how you perform the Matrix.
and this is called the double tap. So it's crazy to me. And the idea that was proposed is bonkers, by the way. They want to pay the teachers who want the guns and will use the guns more for the responsibility of the guns. Or almost.
You know what? I'm not. Yeah, that doesn't even sound like a bad idea, to be honest. It depends.
No,
though. I need those teachers
having the gun.
Yeah, but here's this thing, right? If that teacher goes through the same training that a police officer would to acquire that thing, I reckon that's good. Because then all you've got is a teacher that has the ability to perform that skill. But then, I know. When I said that aloud, it can't be sounded to have a gun in a classroom. That's the same. Right. Not even if the teacher goes nuts. The fact that the teacher has a gun means that someone could grab the gun, could fire accidentally. Like, I know it's low chance.
Like, where you're going to keep these guns? So if they're on school premises, they've got to be somewhere a kid can't get to. So and locked up, right? So now you're losing vital time. What if you can't get to the guns? It's just a solution that isn't a solution. Yeah. It just creates more problems. And as I said, look, this happened in Georgia the other day. This teacher, Jesse Randall Davidson, who taught social studies and also did play-by-play commentary for the local football team, barricaded himself into a room and tried to shoot himself. That's what they're maybe saying here. Allegedly, that's what he tried to do. But he'd also been involved in a similar situation or something back in August.
Oh, fucking hell, his box is going, isn't it?
Do you know what I mean? Like,
even in that picture, he looks like he's had enough. Someone give him all a day or something. He needs a week off, this guy does. He's tried to kill himself twice. Is someone going to get the message? So when in August, so how long is it? What's that, like 5-6 months ago?
Yeah. So, just straight back in school, and then it's all right. Oh, all right, kids. Just gonna close it. Lock the doors. Like, fuck this.
At least
man.
You got all the kids out.
Here's the thing. Like,
at a very minimum, get the kids out.
Yeah, you can't. You can't say we're going to stop gun violence in school by advocating for more people to be bringing guns to schools. Like, that's not it, right? Like, I know, obviously, having it as a gun-free zone didn't save anybody, but I don't want the teachers armed either. I trust them about on the same level as the kids. And I think what you need is just armed guards. Just
but the problem with that is we just saw that don't work.
No, we saw one piece of shit.
Yeah, but if it happens once, mate, shook. Like, what I'm saying is, if I was a kid in America right now, I'm like, oh, what's the defense? We got one old man who's about to retire, who's guarding the door.
Yeah, but it won't be like that. It'll be an actual fucking paid deputy. Maybe you need a bunch of them. Maybe you need more. You know? But just the idea that come out.
What's to stop them going off? I feel like a better way would be like super, super strict security in the school. As in, like, everyone has to go through a metal detector. Every bag is checked. We have like 6 different checkpoints around the school. No one gets in and no one gets out without being scanned and having everything you own checked.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. Again, understand this isn't reasonable for everywhere else, but if you want to stand by the Second Amendment and people are going to have access to guns, and that's the way you want things because it's enshrined in your Constitution, you're probably going to have to do things a little bit differently in your country to anywhere else in the world. And yes, I think there should be certainly a heavy security element to schools. Simple as that.
People are saying that's like really expensive and unrealistic. What? But putting an armed guard in every school who is badass enough to run a rifle isn't. Like, they're both pretty fucking large asks. Like.
So, like I say, I think that's something to think about. But anyway, look, the teacher suggestion is absurd. In my opinion, I don't think that is in the solution at all. But I did see some strange objections to it. So maybe you're with it. Maybe, because you believe everything Trump says is great, and that's fine. Maybe you're with it because you genuinely think it's a good idea. I don't. But here's what I'll say. I saw something that was mind-blowing. And again, why the fuck would anybody rush to make this a racial issue? I do not understand it. I don't understand why identity politics needs to be injected into everything, even tragedies where children die. But there's a website, Sam, called AboveTheLaw.com, and it's a legal blog. It's reasonably well respected. It's been around a long period of time. That respect is eroding on a daily basis. You're going to see why. Well, this is an article where this is unbelievable. So strap yourself in, okay? This is an article that proposes the reason you shouldn't arm teachers is because teachers will just start murdering their black students. This is serious. This is written on a legal blog as a reason to not, you know what I mean? So you can. I'll just read you some of this, and then I'm going to reveal a little bit about the author, which is just an interesting point. But this actually received some serious, sort of sensible discussion. Like, oh yeah, teachers are probably racist like police, so they'll be shooting all the. Oh look, I thought that black student had a gun, and then they'll start framing them and putting guns next to their body, and right. It's mental, anyway.
It's like that fucking Dave Chappelle sketch where he's saying there's like everyone's sprinkling shit on him.
Right. There is one problem with this suggestion, the suggestion to arm teachers, that I'm sure most white people haven't thought about yet. Arming American teachers will directly result in students of color being shot to death at school. Even though, like I said, statistically, school shootings are overwhelmingly perpetrated by white people. I know that. I know that. Because the only other group of public employees that is armed at the behest of the state shoots unarmed people of color on the reg. The cops actually receive extensive training on how to use their firearms, how to assess threats, and how to de-escalate situations, and yet they still murder innocent civilians all the time. Let's be real here. I'm against police shootings and police basically issuing on-death sentences like they're Judge fucking Dredd. Again, I file them in the not fit to wear the badge category when it is done erroneously, and I want them prosecuted to the full extent of the law when I see basically state-endorsed murder occur. I am against police brutality. But to say that police murder innocent civilians all the time is nonsense. The vast majority of police officers in America will never even draw a weapon, let alone discharge one, and let alone discharge one with a fatality. There's a reason why these things are so high profile in the news. Giving a teacher a gun is asking them to be afraid. Makes poor judgment a homicidal offense, and that danger will be borne by black and brown students. The students who make teachers afraid just by their very existence. Yeah. What's this? We'll be telling teachers to shoot armed terrorists breaching the school. What's really going to happen is an unarmed black truant loitering in a hallway he's not supposed to be in will get shot 8 times by the jumpy choir director. Oh, she'll feel just awful about her mistake, but a jury of her peers will never convict her of a crime. So, yeah, you can see there. It ends with the line, black and brown students should not have to die because disgruntled white boys are shooting up their schools. I mean, I don't know how you've got there. So then I looked at the author. The author is Ellie Mistel. And I was like, wait, I know that name. I know that name from something. And I was trying to pin it. And then I was like Googling it and Googling Above the Law and all that, right? Well, this author had caused an absolute fucking stink in the past because this is the editor-at-large, by the way, Ellie Mistel. And as you can see here, this is mentioned in Wikipedia. It was last year. Amazingly, I think, we didn't get round to putting it on the podcast, but it was on one of my lists of things to discuss. And Ellie Mistel wrote an article saying that what African Americans should be doing as a form of protest against white people is they should use jury nullification for any black suspects. So in other words, they just say the defendant's not guilty because we do not agree with the law. And they all just enter pleas of not guilty for every black suspect. So in other words, I mean, this is obviously perverting the course of justice. This is not doing your job as a fair and balanced juror. This is literally aiming to acquit any criminal if they're black, or suspected criminal if they're black. And this was a serious proposal in a legal blog written by its editor-at-large. Not, let's judge the case on its merits, regardless of skin color, and let's decide if this person is a criminal or not a criminal. Now, let's just say not guilty, and that'll totally fuck over the white people in the Trump administration. Unreal, right? Okay, anyway. So, yes, arming teachers, bit silly. Not the way that you're going to fix this problem. There's a bunch of ways to fix the problem. Giving people guns and sending them to school isn't the way you stop school shootings. But Donald Trump, after he said, yo, and keep in mind, by the way, Donald Trump also said something pretty fucked up because I think he said that person should have had his guns taken away from him in an unconstitutional fashion, which is like, listen, dude, what the fuck? You're taking money from the NRA and you're saying you're not going to take away anyone's guns. And then the next minute you're saying, but this guy, it's Trump. He's all over the place. We know that. He flip-flops quite a bit. But anyway, he then decided, I know how I can make all of this go away and unify the country by trotting out one of the same old tired scapegoats, video games. It's video games. It was video games. Of course it was video games. Here's Trump. Trump blames video games for mass shooting. Donald Trump has always been against violent video games because the right is against, and the left, and surprisingly, games journalists as well. Maybe you can believe that.
Everyone just hates games, doesn't it, man?
It's nonsense. I have done multiple talks about this. If you go to the YouTube channel, you'll even find some of them. I've been an advocate for preaching the message about how there is no causal link between video games and real life violence. They've never found it. They have studied this year after year after year, and they have never found the link. I'm going to show you some of the studies that actually prove that there's no causal link. There is no science behind this. But it is said repeatedly, if you play violent video games, it must be linked to violence. There was a time, whenever there was a shooter, they always brought it up. Oh, he played Call of Duty. What's that, like a fucking third of the planet by now? Has probably played that game in some form or another. Complete nonsense. And I've lived through the moral panics. I've lived through it. Right. When I was a kid, Sam, you know what they said was bad? You'll never.
TV.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Music.
Before that, well, yeah. Okay, so let's think about the moral panics we had in the fucking 50s and 60s, right? Where, like, Elvis doing his pelvic thrusts, they were going to make all the women too wet and they were going to go fucking mad and fuck everyone. I mean, we're going to have a population boom. And it would be a tragedy, wouldn't it, if women were in control of their bodies and their sexuality? We must stop this. It's going to make everybody fucking loose. Can't have that. And then it was 60s and the music and the hippies and the flower power movement. And they're all going to take these drugs, these LSD and these mushrooms that are going to open up their mind and make them not want to go to work and do shit jobs because, you know, if you realize that it's all kind of pointless, you know, you're just not going to engage with society anymore. What's it going to do to our GDP? A hangover's one thing. Being so loved up, you no longer want to compete in a consumer market it's dangerous. American society will fail. We must shut down these hippies. We must stop Woodstock. We must stop these people peacefully protesting Vietnam and getting ideas about how they can overthrow the government. We've got to stop all of this. And it starts with the music. You move beyond music. When I was growing up, Dungeons and Dragons, I used to like Dungeons and Dragons. It's great for a kid with an imagination. Used to read all the books. Used to love that shit.
Nerd. What a nerd.
I grew up in a rough fucking estate where every time I fucking took a step outside, it was a baseball bat to the dome.
So you started wielding swords and shields and fucking these bullets up. Riding dragons round this bitch.
I started staying in and finding things to do that weren't going to put me in fucking harm's way. You know, I grew up on a fucking scheme. You know what I mean? Trust me, I used to wake up, look out the window, what's all that noise? There'd be kids that I'd never seen on my estate before, just like digging up the garden.
Like wild dogs.
Yeah. Maybe burying drugs or, you know, I don't know.
Maybe digging them up.
I was a kid. And obviously you don't go out and say, hello, why are you vandalizing our garden?
What's that white powder you're burying?
Yeah, or you get like a fucking crack to the fucking dome. That's how I
God, don't hit me. Bring the dragons back. Where's me dragon?
You tell me, Sam, right? Like, as a kid, if you weren't juiced in and connected in fucking Port Talbot, right? There were certain places you just couldn't go to hang out.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, you know, right? So
the streets you don't go in when it's dark.
So we got fucking told, right, that Dungeons and Dragons, which was a retreat for me when I didn't, you know, when I wasn't big enough to defend myself or big enough to get out there and fucking man up and, you know, meet violence with violence, right? I got told it was going to turn me into a Satanist. This was on the news. Dungeons and Dragons, what are the kids doing in their bedroom? Are they worshipping Satan? We're not worshipping Satan, I'll tell you, Mr. Newsman. We're just trying to not get our fucking heads domed in. We're just trying to use our imagination and get away from the shit world that we live in, you know. Is that all right?
Just fun, innit?
Wasn't all right. There was even an episode of a TV show called Taggart in the UK, which is a detective show about a grizzled Scottish detective. He's dead now. He looks at Alex Ferguson. He had a red fucking nose, and he was a pisshead, and he was Scottish. And they did an episode where Dungeons and Dragons people were so fucked up and into the game they were killing people, and that just went out on fucking television. And everyone went, yeah, fucking Dungeons and Dragons. It was a blind moral panic. Then obviously we had video nasties. Remember video nasties? There was a time, right, where you couldn't get horror movies. They had to be kept under the counter like it was fucking hardcore porn. You'd be like,
can I get that horror? Like,
yeah. Listen, is it possible to get Evil Dead 2? No, you can't have that, mate. The video nasty. They pretended they you know, fucking, if you watched a horror movie, you couldn't watch Driller Killer. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was banned. I was told Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a fucking snuff movie when I was a kid. Legit. This is the lies and the bullshit. So then it was the video nasties. And then, of course, that went fucking hacker when Jamie Bulger was murdered. An awful case. But, like, because the kids had been watching Child's Play, you know, with Chucky the doll.
Yeah.
Forget ever watching a horror again for the next 20 years. You're sick. You're fucked. You're demented. What if I want to watch Driller Killer? Driller Killer is social commentary about urban decay. Can't watch that, mate. Someone gets a drill in his head. Yeah, it looks wicked. It's a great bit of special effects. I'm not unhinged. I know it's not fucking real. I don't want to do it myself. Real. Like, I just want to watch a movie. Is that all right? No. Can't do that. That's banned. You're sick. They did it with Rambo when the Hungerford shooting happened. I was a guy fucking in the UK, one of our rare mass shootings, and he'd watched Rambo a bunch and fancied himself as a soldier. Got that fucking military hero syndrome thing going on. Went up to a fucking tower and shot a bunch of innocent people just shopping in that. He'd watched Rambo 40 times before he did it. They blamed Rambo. Imagine that. I mean,
Rambo.
It's only one of the most fucking popular Sylvester Stallone movies. I think more than this guy saw it, you know. I don't think it was like some fucking mad... who's got the copy of Rambo then? Like 6 people saw it, you know.
Sylvester Stallone don't get credit for no boxing heavyweights winning the championship because of Rocky, or does he? He only gets the bullshit end of the deal.
And then it went back to music. They're putting subliminal messages in the metal sound. If you listen to fucking Slayer or Sepultura or fucking Metallica or Black Sabbath, if you listen to it backwards, yeah, that'd kill you, kill yourself. And there was that dude who fucking tried to shoot himself in the fucking face, and he fucked it up. He had a suicide pact with his friend. His mate went first. Success. The guy went second, blew half his lips off, and lived for another 3 years in agony. And his parents took the fucking band to court. That's how, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. As my defense, it is not my fault if your box is gone.
Like Bill Hicks always said it best. He said, what famous band wants their audience dead? How do you sell records? Like, fuck, our second album's not selling. Yeah, everyone who bought the first listened to it backwards and killed themselves. That's it. It's over. People fucking... the moral panic. The moral panic, guys. It's nonsense. So anyway, they're blaming video games again. Now listen, I don't care how violent the video games fucking look like. They're not going into your fucking brain and making you be violent. They've tried, trust me. They have wanted to prove this for years. It would be perfect if they could. But there is just no study. There's just no study that verifies a link. None. Right? And not only that, the numbers don't even make sense. There was a Pew study just in 2015 about this after yet again games being fucking demonized. You can see this here. And you can see 49% of American adults have played video games. 10% define themselves as gamers. And if you go... Gamer! Yeah, wait! And if you go through that fucking study, you'll find that... If think about it, right? Like, if you go through that study, the correlation between violence and the amount of people who call themselves gamers, it don't make sense. It doesn't work. Because the violence is going like this, and gamers are going like this. Now, I'm not a fucking maths whiz, Sam, but I can see something. And then there was also this study in Newzoo, right? So understand that we're not just talking about American society here. If video games were a problem and they caused violence, they would cause violence everywhere in the world, right? It's America that's got this problem, supposedly. All these other countries that have, like, rich video game cultures, no problems. Japan, 60% of the Japanese population played a video game in 2016. But it's got one of the lowest rates of gun crime, despite all of these games having guns in them. There was only 6 deaths by gun in Japan in 2014.
You know, that's pretty good.
6. Yeah. But wait, they're playing video games, so that don't make no sense. The New York Times in 2013, they broke down a bunch of research from a university. I can't remember which one it was. And you can see this here. This was studying the effects of playing violent video games. And they said here, a burst of new research has begun to clarify what can and cannot be said about the effects of violent gaming. Playing the games can and does stir hostile urges and mildly aggressive behavior in the short term. We've all thrown a control pad across the room. We've all smashed a keyboard up. We've all done it.
But that's the same as like competitive sports, anything like that. It's exactly the same.
Dude, when someone's tackled me from behind, I turn around and kick them back, right? In the heat of the moment, right? And we both get sent off and we look like a right pair of cunts.
And you have a pint afterwards and say, oh,
yeah. I don't then fucking think, right, gonna fucking
murder it is.
Yeah. Gonna drop kick that cunt right to his face as soon as he comes out. It's over. You leave it on the field. Moreover, youngsters who develop a gaming habit can become slightly more aggressive as measured by clashes with peers, for instance, at least over a period of a year or two. Yet it is not at all clear whether, over longer periods, such a habit increases the likelihood that the person will commit a violent crime. Such calculated rampages are too rare to study in any rigorous way. Anyway, researchers agree. So there's, again, nothing in that study. There was a court... there was a Supreme Court ruling, which actually included Scalia, who died recently. Yes, Brown versus the Entertainment Merchants Association. This is 2011. The Supreme Court rejected that violent video games promote real-life violence, and it was ruled 7-2 in favor of that ruling. Judge Scalia said psychological studies purporting to show a connection between exposure to violent video games and harmful effects on children do not prove such exposure causes minors to act aggressively. Any demonstrated effects are both small and indistinguishable from effects produced by any other media. That's a Supreme Court ruling. Okay. Is that not enough? It probably isn't, is it? Let me find you some more. There was one study. Is this it? Let me just see. I know that there's a study that shows that there is a desensitization effect if you play violent games. You get slightly desensitized to seeing it, but that study absolutely... it was the Annenberg Public Policy Center. There you go. They absolutely rejected the idea that it would cause you to go and enact these things. You get slightly desensitized to seeing them. They don't shock you as much, but the idea you would go out and copy them, emulate them, or replicate them does not exist. There was a study in, is this Frontier in Psychology, I think is another one. Let me just see if I can find this. Yes, so Frontiers in Psychology is obviously a periodical. They did a study, which let me just see if this link works. Yes, it does. So here you go. They ruled that violent video games do not affect your capacity to empathize with other human beings in any way, shape, or form, and do not impact on empathic neural responses in any way, shape, or form. This is a 2000. This is a brand new study. This is from 2017. So, do you know what I mean? Like, how much more is it going to take? How many more scientific studies do we have to fucking put into place that show that there is absolutely no correlation between playing violent video games? And in fact, one of the studies I always reference when I do these talks about it is there was an Oxford gaming study, which was from, let me think, 2016. And they did a study in children that play video games because they were like, oh, well, maybe it's only if you have exposure to video games when you're younger. So they went that way. And you can see here, this study found, again, no evidence violent video games make children aggressive. But actually, they did find that if you're a gamer, you're more likely to be sociable and your IQ is likely to come out slightly higher if you're a child gamer. Fact. These are facts. You're more likely to socialize better and you're more likely to have an increased IQ. I've certainly seen no evidence of that in person, but whatever. Apparently, the science backs it up. And on top of that as well, let me show you. Let me just show you a picture here. So again, we talked about the numbers, right? So let's take the statistics from the Bureau of Justice, right? And let's talk about U.S. the U.S. violent crime rate by year up until 2009. And in this graph, it is the number of victims of violent crimes per 1,000 people as a population in the U.S., obviously age 12 or older. So, look, in 1973, it was 47.7. In 1976, 48.0. 1979, 51.7. 1982, 50.7. Now I'm going to tell you, video games start about here. This is where you get your Pong. All right? Starts going down, 42 by 1985. 44.1 by 1988. Little spike in the 90s. With some crazy shit going on. Back up to 51.2. But then look at it. Consistently, as video games become more and more accessible, more and more realistic, more and more violent, the number drops. 38.8 in 97, 27.4 in 2000, 21.0 in 2006, down to an all-time low in 2010, 2009 of 15. Violent crime has been consistently decreasing while video games are going up and up and up, and more people are playing them. There is no fucking metric, there is no science, there is no measurement that would suggest at all that there's a connection with violent video games. None. And I've literally probably left out about another 12 studies, but it's getting close to Sam's bedtime. So I did just want to point this out, because what you'll find in America is whenever anything gets in the news and it's a little bit controversial, your lawmakers don't think, well, hang on, we need to adopt a side based on the side of truth or whatever. They actually do this. They try and get in on it. They try and make money. So this is what's going on over in Rhode Island. A politician said there should be a tax on violent video games. This is in the aftermath of this latest shooting in Florida, which, by the way, video games, not violent, nothing to do with it. Right? So, this is the Rhode Island State House, Robert Nardolio. He wants to raise the tax on violent video games, and he's going to use that money to pay for mental health and counseling resources in schools. Now, here's the thing: I'm not against where you spend the money, but I am against the way you try and raise it, because you are implying there is some sort of causal link, and the science does not back that up. I would love you to put more money into mental health and counseling in schools, but why the fuck has it got to be video games that pays for it when video games aren't causing the problem? You know? How does that make sense? But that's what they're doing. Now, hopefully this gets fucking laughed at. There's just no studies. Nothing. It is a joke. Interestingly enough, actually, he said here, both the American Psychological Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics have released studies showing a connection between violent video games and the increased levels of aggression in children. And you can see we just cited some of them, that 2015 study. But it says it has an impact on aggression in the very short term. And it also said there is no psychological evidence to link it to criminal violence or physiological and neurological changes. They don't do that. A 2016 study from the Academy of Pediatrics, the one he's referencing, the one he wants to stand by and go down with the Titanic with, says that there is an experimental linkages between virtual violence and real-world aggression. But even in that study, they have to concede that a real-world study that links violence and real-world, in-game violence and real-world violence has never been conducted. They cannot find it, that they keep trying. And he's citing two very flawed studies against what I just showed you, which is a bunch of statistical data that you can apply common sense to, and, of course, multiple studies that contradict the findings in these two studies. How convenient those are the two studies he decides to cite. It's absolute gibberish. And, yeah, that is a good proposal there. Why not tax politicians talking shit? So, anyway. We go back to the war on video games, which is kind of where I got into fucking video games. But I think we can all agree that video games are not the problem here. We need to fucking look at some serious issues in the way American gun regulation occurs. But that doesn't mean repealing the Second Amendment. That doesn't mean demonizing ARs. That doesn't mean demonizing responsible gun owners all over America. And it certainly doesn't mean looking at the Second Amendment. The Constitution, the fucking Bill of Rights is one of the best documents ever created for its citizenry. It is prescient and intelligently written out, and the right to bear arms is part of that, whether you fucking like it or not. And there are good intentions behind it. And you do not iron out the tragedies by removing something like that. There has got to be a sensible way forward. And it's not fucking banning video games. It's not arming teachers. It's fixing the systemic failings when these dangerous people who are in the minority by a long way decide to abuse something that is there that for everybody, a freedom, a protection. So that's the show. That's what we thought. But I didn't realize, Sam, and I feel like a bit of a scumbag for not realizing. It's only St. David's Day.
Well, it's just gone now. It's 12:30, but yeah, still technically it is the day of our patron saint, mate. Yeah.
Well, no, it still is for me.
Yeah.
So how did I not know? What a disgrace.
Didn't he, mate? First match.
Yeah. So do you want to tell the story of St. David, mate? Get us in the mood to wrap up the show.
Why have I got to tell it? I can find one. Is there one I can just read?
No, come on. I thought you knew about St. David.
Wait, yeah, I do, but we learned it in primary school.
Yeah.
Essentially, he
he
wore a fucking leek on his head, and he fought people who were coming in. That's basically how it went. People were invading, he put a leek on his head, and he said, "Let's have it."
But yes, he did indeed protect Wales
from the Saxons.
Yes, from the Saxons. And indeed, I used to knock about where he was. Yeah, no, where he was from. I'm not that old, but in Ceredigion. So just down there. So St. David's Day. So to end the show, what other fitting way to end it other than the fucking Welsh national anthem, brother?
Yeah, and I'm gonna play the one from when Wales beat England 33 in 2013. One of the nicest ones. And also, I don't think I have to cut this out for copyright, so maybe it might be in the VOD. We'll see. Not sure. Maybe. But anyway, if not, go watch it on YouTube yourself because it's fucking straight fire. Even if you're not Welsh, it'll give you goosebumps. Yeah, it is. It is one of the greatest national anthems in the world. So look, thanks very much. We know it was a serious topic. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate listening to it. Thanks very much to Jay for the new graphics. Thanks to everybody who subscribed and supports the show, all the people who tuned in. And of course, be safe wherever you are. And now let us just enjoy St. David's Day. Take care.